Hello everyone, Chaos here. Today I'm going to be looking at doing a Phoenixborn tier list video for Ashes as of the release of Ashes Ascendancy. And I'll be honest, I've started this video several times, and each time that I've started it, I've gone way too long on into too many details about the various Phoenixborn, and I could easily end up spending multiple hours talking about these. But I'm trying to keep this video in under about an hour as best as I can. So I'm going to try and be really quick and concise. I may not cover everything in like precise detail, but I want this to be watchable and not just like hours long content. So with that out of the way, let me set the stage here for this tier list and what to expect. First off, as with any tier list video, it's important disclaimer that this is my opinion, and I think I'm a good Ashes player. I don't think I'm like great or the best. I've top cutted a few tournaments. I've won a couple tournaments, but like at the end of the day, I'm not the best player, and I take this with a grain of salt. I'm gonna try and give the best insight I can, but like I don't know everything. Other players, other better players than me have done tier lists, and for the most part, I think the community is in agreement of where a lot of these stand. But there might be some variations within the tiers or even placement of some Phoenixborn in certain tiers. So again, disclaimer, my opinion. Feel free to disagree and argue with me in the comments. The other thing is like just kind of giving a little bit of expectations of what the tiers mean. So here's the kind of categories for me, how I define them. So S tier, I would define as, obviously these are the cream of the crop, best Phoenixborn overall. But more specifically, I would say S tier Phoenixborn are very competitively viable. You'll see them in top cuts or winning tournaments. They are very consistent. They have a lot of different variety of builds that you can do with them. They're very versatile. They have lots of very powerful abilities and strong stat lines. And most significantly, I think S tier, what defines S tier is they have little to no meaningful large drawbacks or downsides, which makes it kind of like there's an opportunity cost you have to ask yourself every time you're building with like an A or a B tier Phoenixborn of like, is this, are the upsides of these Phoenixborn providing more than like the consistent base level that like an S tier Phoenixborn would bring? I think that's how I define S tier. And there's not many Phoenixborn I would say that fit in that tier, but yeah, that's how I define it. Now A tier, again, strong game plans, like versatile, consistent Phoenixborn. The big difference between A and S for me is like A tiers Phoenixborn have at least one kind of major drawback or significant downside that you have to build around, or they may have slightly narrower range of builds you can do with them, or require a little bit more building around, but are still like consistent and strong and kind of and versatile. But they have some drawbacks. Maybe one significant one, or maybe a couple of smaller drawbacks. B tier is sort of similar, kind of going down the line. B tier, I still think B tier Phoenixborn are really strong and solid. I think you could build strong decks with them. You can absolutely bring B tier Phoenixborn to a tournament and potentially even win. Like I think it's been done before. It'll be done again. Ashes has a really high skill ceiling, and so I think that means that like even like the B tier Phoenixborn have potential. The main thing is B tier Phoenixborn for me have more than one kind of significant downside or bigger opportunity costs. So you have to ask yourself, they may have a weaker signature card or two. They may have like an ability that's not as consistent, or like their stat line is kind of weak or whatever. There's different ways that you have to like kind of build around their downsides. But their plan A's can still be strong enough to make up for that for sure. And they may not have quite as many, like quite as much of a build variety, or may not be as versatile. Maybe they're more narrow in focus. But like, yeah, B tier Phoenixborn still good. Now C is like the lowest tier for me. I don't think that there's any like F tier, whatever, unplayably bad Phoenixborn in this game. I think that any Phoenixborn in this game is at least playable. It's just C tier is like the downsides outweigh the upsides, and you really, really, really have to like maximize their best use case. And even if you do that with a C tier Phoenixborn, even if you maximize their best use case and optimize for like their plan A and make it the best that you possibly can, they're still going to be like have inconsistent matchups. They're still going to have like weaknesses or ways that you can play around them. They're still going to have like significant drawbacks. And you have to ask yourself, like, am I willing to pay the opportunity cost to not play a better Phoenixborn for this deck, a better shell, than, you know, and try and like build around this upside. I think that's kind of where they sit. I don't think they're unplayable. I just think C is like, you know, you have to ask yourself, like, why am I building with this Phoenixborn? And even at their very best, they're probably their ceiling is probably hitting the floor of like an A tier Phoenixborn. So just keep that in mind. So that's kind of like the intro to like what the tiers mean and my philosophy around it. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, here we go. So Aradel. Aradel for me is solidly A tier. And she gets by with being A tier primarily off the strength of her Phoenixborn card. Her stat line is really versatile. 8 battlefield is excellent. It's among the higher battlefields that you can get in the game. And 4 spellboard lets you do a lot of different versatile builds. You don't have to be quite as reliant on allies as a 3 spellboard PB can. You can do some interesting stuff. 16 life is on the lower end. It's not the lowest you can get, but it's low. And you kind of have to babysit Aradel a little bit. You have to be careful with your Phoenixborn guards and make sure you're protecting that life total and using it well. It does put you on thinner margins than other Phoenixborn with this kind of like stat line. But the main strength of Aradel is Water Blast. It's a side action removal spell, and side action removal is very strong. 2 damage for 1 die is like a really solid rate for damage. It does lock you into nature, but typically that's not really a big deal for Aradel. There are plenty of Aradel lists that have only splashed like 1 nature die just for Water Blast, and that's okay. I think she's really versatile, and I think that side action removal is really strong. The major downsides of Aradel is that her signature cards are not very powerful. Summon Blue Jaguar is a really weak conjuration. 1/2 for 2 is just not cutting it. A lot of Aradel players don't bother with Blue Jaguar. They may only play it because they think it's fun or, you know, for jank reasons, but it's not a very competitive card. Rejuvenate can be really strong. I think it's a really solid card that has some really cool builds, especially in these colors over here. You'll see like there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with Aradel, with Rejuvenate rather. But at the end of the day, it is still like a utility style ready spell that, you know, is hard to first 5, especially without draw. But it's difficult to kind of like make this work. There's a lot of moving parts with this card, and that's why it's not as like consistently good. But all that said, I think Aradel still absolutely deserves to be an A tier, and it's interesting because I think it proves the power of like side action removal and like a good stat line. Because even though her signature cards aren't great, and that's like kind of multiple downsides, I think she's still A and not B. So Aradel, A tier. Arren Frostpeak, I'm gonna put him in A as well for many of the same reasons that Aradel is in A. Right now, the astral card pool is pretty limited, and I think that's why Arren is kind of sort of in a weird space right now, but he has the kind of the same things going on as Aradel, like a solid battlefield stat, slightly less, spell ward, but still this 7/3 is like really good for an aggressive Phoenixborn. 15 life is the lowest, obviously is lower than Aradel. But the thing is, Ascend lets you put an Astral Die on him, and that can act as like protection. It prevents 1 damage when dealt to him. So in a way, Ascend is similar to Water Blast, and that's like the side action removal thing. Not quite as good of a rate, dealing 1 damage instead of 2, but you get that pseudo healing effect. And so Arren, in effect, can have, like 18 or 19 life, depending on how long the game goes. Like 7/18/3 or 7/19/3 with side action removal is quite good, actually. I think this is really strong. He's strong in many of the same ways that Aradel is. His signature card, Aerial Strike, and again, he only has 1 signature card right now. That's kind of a drawback. But Aerial Strike being a side action card, like this is a really strong removal spell. Like 1 die for 4 damage to a unit is very, very strong. There's very few cards in the game that can kill a knight and go up 2 dice advantage without like significant setup or anything. And this does have a setup cost. You have to have a Phoenixborn like Astral Die on your Phoenixborn. The thing is, like, getting the die on there is not the hard part. The thing is that it's very highly interactable for your opponent. They can ping that die off, they can attack you, they can force a Phoenixborn guard, and you lose that die. And suddenly the rate, the value of this spell goes way down because you have to use more dice to set it up. And furthermore, the only way to get dice on your Phoenixborn right now is with side action stuff. So like you still have to wait that turn to play this card. So yeah, I think this adds up to Arren being like having a lot of potential power and a lot of like good baseline, but just slightly inconsistent and weird, and the card pool doesn't really support him quite as strongly as others. I still think Arren deserves to be an A tier right now. He may move up or down along A or maybe even into S, but right now I think he's solidly A. Okay, moving on. Astrea. Astrea, well, let's talk about Astrea before I rank her real quick. So Astrea is like your de facto control Phoenixborn in this game. She has a 4 battlefield, 4 spellboard, which this is kind of a weaker stat line overall, but it's common for like more control oriented Phoenixborn. 19 life is really, really good. That's not like the best, but it is really high, and she's going to need that life to play the kind of play style that she plays. Beguile is a really strong ability. Like 1 die to exhaust anything is really solid. You could exhaust a knight for 1, and your opponent spent 3, but they didn't get any value that round. It is like delayed. It is like a stall type thing, right? Without other ways to kill the exhausted unit, it is 1 die to basically just stall, and your opponent still gets to keep that value for later. But the thing is, Astrea also has this signature card, Judgment, which is 2 dice and a card to destroy all units. And there's no other way in this game to have this kind of absolute board wipe. No conditions, not damage based. It just kills everything. And this is a very, very, very strong tool in Astrea's kit. It makes the downside of Beguile and of having a small battlefield a lot more manageable, because you get to kill that exhausted unit like when the time is right, and you get to clear your own battlefield slots up so that you can play more units. This is exactly the kind of card you want in a control Phoenixborn, and it plays right into what she's doing over here. And I think Judgment is really, really strong. Her other signature card, Mark of the Goddess, can also be really solid, honestly. It's like a pretty decent removal spell in its own right, and it can be a really powerful burn spell if you set it up right. The problem is that it's competing with Judgment for slots, and so I think because of that, it doesn't see quite as much play, or at least the opportunity cost is really high. But all this together, I think, puts Astrea in like a really strong position. She has like, you know, some downsides, but they're, you know, solved by her upsides. And she has like a solid stat line, always relevant ability that, honestly, this ability too, we didn't talk about this, but it forces your opponent to have to play a certain way, like play around it, and it plays suboptimally. Like it forces their play patterns, which is also really strong. So where do I put Astrea? I think Astrea is in A tier. You know, that was a lot of upsides and not many downsides. So you might be wondering, like, why is she not an S? Well, this is just personally, I think it's harder. Like, control is weird in Ashes. It's not like other games where, you know, you kind of like you play this game of attrition where you're trying to wear your opponent down on resources and stabilize in the late game, and then start playing bombs that lock your opponent out, and they don't have the ability to rebuild a board after a wipe, or they are running low on cards or whatever. That kind of like control doesn't exist in this game because you always draw up to 5. You always have 10 dice. Control just looks different. It just has a different sort of, plays out differently in this game. And I think the way it plays out in this game tends to feel a lot more balanced, a lot more fair, and it forces control to have, like, you know, they can't just stall indefinitely. They either have to have a game plan to win, or they have to play for fatigue. And a lot of times, it's hard to play for fatigue in this game. Like, so I think that Astrea, if in any other game, may have been like, whoa, this is crazy strong. But I think she's actually pretty balanced. She's really good, and not a whole lot of, like, I wouldn't put her in B because I don't think she has like as many significant downsides. Maybe her deck building is a little more narrow, but I think she absolutely belongs in A for those reasons. Okay, let's talk about Brennen. So Brennen, at one point in this game, Brennen would have unquestionably, undoubtedly been an S tier Phoenixborn, top of S tier, maybe even like busted tier, like above S, but like absolutely up here. However, the way things have played out, the situation that Brennen is in at the moment is, I would put Brennen probably as our first C tier. Breaking this pattern, by the way, of like all the A name Phoenixborns being an A. Brennen's, I don't think Brennen's B. I think Brennen's C tier. And this is why. So Brennen received some errata, some Balance errata, which really hit Brennen hard in like several different ways. I won't talk about the differences between prior Brennen. I'm just going to talk about where Brennen's at right now. Okay, so she has a 5/3 stat line with 16 life. This is among the worst stat lines you can have in this game. Like 3 spell board, usually you have a higher battlefield to compensate for a 3 spell board. Brennen has a 5 battlefield, which is pretty low. This is in the territory of where you have to start thinking about ways to self-clear and everything. And yes, Brennen does have a way to self-clear. We'll talk about that. But 16 life, really low. Phoenixborn that have this kind of like stat line, like if you look at like Odette, has a 5/3, but Odette also has like one of the most powerful Phoenixborn abilities in the game and a higher life total, right? Brennen's ability is main action, ceremonial, destroy an ally you control to deal 2 damage to a target Phoenixborn. Direct burn is really good, I think. I think it's a really good ability. 2 damage for 1 die is on rate for burn spells. You don't have to spend the card, it's just there on your Phoenixborn. That's really solid, and it does help with this battlefield issue, like having the self-clear. But unfortunately, because it specifies an ally you control, it does significantly impact the consistency of this ability, and it gives your opponent like a lot of ways to play around it. So on its own, I think that this wouldn't be like the end of the world for Brennen. I think that you know, the stat line's pretty weak, but the ability could be strong if inconsistent. There could be like a really strong case for a burn game plan for this Phoenixborn. We would really be looking for Brennen to have some strong signature cards to support this. And that's kind of where Brennen falls apart. Black Cloud Ninja is just not a very good unit. It's a 1/1 for 1, just already below rate. It has no specific synergy with Brennen's ability or game plan at all. You know, you could place an exhaustion token on an unexhausted ready spell. That could potentially, if you time it right and you're able to pull it off, maybe you could strand some dice for your opponent, like where they can't spend everything that they wanted to spend in round 1. But in rounds 2 beyond, that's really not going to happen, like almost ever. There's not a whole lot of ready spells that Brennen would be scared of that, you know, she would want to exhaust. So really, Black Cloud Ninja is like, and it is an ally you can sacrifice, but there are so many other better allies that you would like to sacrifice to play, like Fire Archer in this place. It makes it really hard to justify playing Black Cloud Ninja. The other signature card for Brennen, unfortunately, is just a whole different Brennen. It covers up. You can't activate your Phoenixborn's ability. It gets rid of her burn ability, Spirit Burn, and replaces it with this kind of control-y, bouncing allies and dealing damage to the board type thing, which is a completely different gameplay style for Brennen. And it requires setup, and it eats up one of your spellboard slots, which you already have the lowest in the game, and a low battlefield to compensate for that. So like, you have less spellboard slots, which usually means I need to focus more on allies, but then you have less battlefield slots to spam allies. It's just like convoluted, and like there can be good change of heart synergies and cool stuff you can do with this, but ultimately I think that this really, really hurts Brennen, and it sucks that she's the only Phoenixborn in the entire game that her Phoenixborn signature card turns off her Phoenixborn ability and says, no, you can't do that. I think Brennen is sadly solidly in C tier. Does that mean like there's no good Brennen list? I think maybe, honestly. I think there's maybe some cool stuff you can do with Change of Heart, but ultimately she's just super inconsistent and has way too many downsides. All right, let's keep things moving with Cole Rorquin. I'm going to put Cole as our first S tier Phoenixborn. This might be a surprise to some people, but yeah, I think he absolutely deserves this. Let's take a look. So the thing about Cole is he's got a pretty respectable stat line. 6'4" is really flexible. 6 is, it's not a huge battlefield, but it's not small enough, not so small that you have to start thinking too heavily about, like, having ways to self-clear a lot, and switching up like what kinds of units you can run. He can go wide, he can swarm, he can do that kind of thing. And then 4 spell board, really flexible. 15 life obviously is, the lowest value in the game, and it's a pretty significant drawback for Cole, but it makes sense why when you look at the rest of his package. So Slash is, we've already talked about just how strong side action removal is on your Phoenixborn. Aradel, Water Blast, Arren, they have side action removal on their Phoenixborn too, but they're paying dice for it. Cole, not only is he, it's a diceless ability, but it's also a non-exhausting ability. So the upper limit for how many times you can slash in a round is just like your main actions. How many main actions do you have, and how many cards are in your hand? And this means Cole can be extremely aggressive and can push a lot of damage out really fast, especially with a good card draw engine backing him up. And there's been more and more really efficient, cheap card draw cards printed in recent sets. I think Cole has only gotten better over time as better draw has been introduced into the game. And yeah, slash is just a really strong ability. It can be direct damage too, to the Phoenixborn, so it can be burn damage as well, which gives him like a win con right there on his Phoenixborn too. Compared to like Aradel, compared to Brennen, you can see why the floor for this is pretty low actually, and or pretty high, and the ceiling is potentially even higher. It's really just this life drawback that's kind of the big deal with Cole. He has to be a little bit more conservative about how he uses that life, and it could put him in a little bit of tighter margins. But I think he's got like an absolute powerhouse of a Phoenixborn card. And in addition to that, he has a signature card that is really, really strong. 100 Blades does everything Cole's wanting to do. Like deals damage to a Phoenixborn, deals AoE damage to all the opponent's units, and draws another card to feed slash even more. I think it's not always so common for a Phoenixborn card, like a signature card, and the Phoenixborn card itself to have such a synergy and focus and like really work well together. Cole has this going for him, and it's a big deal. Like I think Cole is like one of the best, like I don't know, most focused designs in the game, and it works out for him. Cole is like a consistently rather a threat you need to be thinking about in the meta. Final Stand is his other signature card, and honestly, it's really solid too. It's just that it's a lot more awkward to kind of set up. And Cole is not wanting for ways to deal with bigger units. Like 4 damage for 1 die is great. Like we just talked about that with Arren. Like that is huge. But you do have to like walk through a bunch of hoops. Like having no cards in your hand means generally your opponent's probably going to have most of their units be exhausted. You can't do this as a nasty surprise top around to kill something that's unexhausted, There's not a whole lot of ways to just dump your hand outside of slash. So yeah, and also he already has stuff like Fester, which kind of does the same sort of job. But I do like that Final Stand can be this like big splashy play at the end of the game. If you're really low on health, you can kill something and deal 2 damage to target Phoenixborn. So it's got some like really nice upside to it. It's just not as consistent as 100 Blades, which is just always going to be great. But yeah, in my opinion, I think Cole is absolutely deserving of the S tier. Like what I described earlier as S tier is like having little to no meaningful, significant downsides and having like tons of huge upsides and great synergy and flexibility. That 15 life is certainly a downside. It is one. But I don't think it's enough to push him down here with these Phoenixborn A tier. I think he absolutely belongs to be up here in S. So let's move on. We got Dimona, which okay, she was out of order. So Dimona Ortenstar. Let's take a look at her before we go any further. This is another Phoenixborn that is was hit by errata, or not errata, but a balance patch. So Take to the Skies is now chained in organized play. So I would say, like, before this card was chained, I would have put Dimona up here in S tier as well. I think she would have absolutely belonged up here. But now that that card is chained, I think she's probably down here in A somewhere. I'm gonna put her like, I don't know, I'm gonna put her at the end, but like I'll move these around later. But for now, the reason for that being, like, Take to the Sky is one of the reasons why it was so oppressive is the round 1 potential and like kind of the difficulty that you could create for your opponent to have any meaningful interaction with her before she can divinity mount and swing with a 3/3 that blows up the whole board. When it's coming in later rounds, there's, you know, you can plan for it. You don't have quite as much crazy upfront pressure put on you. You don't have to answer as many things in first 5, and I think that's a big deal. This card is still very, very strong. It's 1 die, but there's the hidden cost of having to, you know, play a mountable ally, swing with it, get it exhausted, and then have it stick around long enough to promote it into an Imperium mount. But you know, that does give you a, you know, a 3/3 for pseudo 2. Like, there's a lot of hidden costs with Dimona. It's hard to evaluate her ability because mounts are highly interactable. It's a highly interactable mechanic. Your opponent has a lot of control over how and when you can mount. And it hides the costs. Like, you have an ally in hand, you're paying whatever dice it costs to put the ally into play. Then you're paying this, so that's like 3 dice for a 3/3 and a come into play effect on an ally, an attack with the ally. Like, that's still like really good rate. That's solid. And then Take to the Skies is another 1 die that has, you know, summons a 3/3, which again, that's huge. But then when it's destroyed and exhaustible, when it's destroyed, you wound your Phoenixborn, and your Phoenixborn has kind of low health to start with. So all that to say, it's hard to evaluate Take to the Skies and Dimona's ability. They are certainly strong. They're really flexible, and they put out beefy units that are hard to deal with. But there are a lot of hidden costs, and there are some downsides. Her stats are, you know, decent. 7/3 is great. That's kind of like the go-to for like an aggressive Phoenixborn. But 16 life, you know, is on the lower side, and it can absolutely be a liability, especially if you're summoning divinity mounts. Like, it can be a huge liability. Wayward Knight, her other signature card. Honestly, since Take to the Skies has come out, I don't know if anyone actually runs it or not. Like 6 months ago. I'd have to look into that, but I imagine people don't really use this card much, or maybe they run a 2-1 split. This card can be, it's just a little awkward. 3/3 for 3 is not a great rate. It's an understated unit, and you know, you do get an ally shuffled into your draw pile. You don't actually draw it, which is really annoying. It just shuffles an ally into a draw pile, and then the side action charge means it can attack the turn you play it, which is great. But the number of targets that it can, you know, trade up with in a meaningful way is, you know, it's limited. Like, if you're killing a Frostback Bear with this, that's great. If you're killing like a, I don't know, a Tidal Crab or something, you know, that's great. If you're killing a 1/1 or some chump blocker or whatever with this, that's not great. If you're ramming this into a knight and it dies and the knight still lives, that's not great. So yeah, it's kind of hard to say. Like, I don't think Wayward Knight is that great. I think Take to the Skies is like her premier card now, which does kind of, you know, funnel Dimona into a specific build. Now, one of the cool things about Dimona that is like a little side benefit is that she has so many ways to spend basic dice costs that it makes her extremely flexible with like how she like what her dice spreads can be. She's always got a way to sink at least like 2 or 3 dice, that is really flexible, and it makes her more resilient to mill because she's not having to meditate quite as much, which is cool. If she was more of a late game Phoenixborn, I think that would matter more. But the dice flexibility is like a really cool upside. As it stands, though, I don't think I'd put her up here with Cole. I think she has slightly more downsides and inconsistency than Cole. I would say she's high A, maybe low S. I would probably put her above Aradel, to be honest. Just having a signature card that's actually really good. Yeah, I'm happy with her right here for now. So next up, Echo. So Echo Grey Storm. I think Echo is A as well. Probably right up here with Dimona. Maybe a light above Dimona, but right up here with Dimona. So Echo has kind of amazing stats, honestly. 6-3, you know, like the battlefield. I weight battlefield a lot heavier than spellboard. I think most people do. This is a little bit lower than some of the more, you know, aggressive Phoenixborn, but man, 19 life is just awesome. Like, that's really good. His Phoenixborn ability is free, which is also a huge upside. It places an exhaustion token at side action speed and remove at the end of the round. So it's a temporary ability that you have to combo with other things. But it has so much utility, so many different ways that you can utilize this. Put an exhaustion token on a key, blocker, or unit guard, swing past them. That's a great use for this. You can put an exhaustion token down to with like an accelerate to use 2 shadows and kill something. You can put an exhaustion token down to false demon and deal a damage. You can also just put an exhaustion token on a unit and swing into it so it doesn't get any counter damage. It gives you like a pseudo quick strike ability. That's also really solid. So yeah, a lot of different ways you can use this ability. That's really cool, and I think the use cases for this will only continue to grow as we get more ways to, like, main action ways to interact with exhausted units or anything like that. Chaos Gravity is kind of it is such a hugely swingy card. Sometimes Chaos Gravity doesn't do a whole lot. Sometimes it's like a, you know, refresh with extra steps. Other times it is backbreakingly strong. Like, it is really, really, really scary, and your opponent has to play around it all the time. You know, at bare minimum, you get to exhaust something and remove an exhaustion from something. But yeah, there's so many different ways you can, like, utilize this. You can exhaust a thing, move an exhaustion token from like one of their smaller units to like a bigger, more impactful unit, and then, you know, refresh one of your own, right? Or it's just, yeah, there's a lot that you can do with this, or you can double exhaust too. Place an exhaustion token on the unit, move from a different unit onto that one, double exhaust that unit so that it's exhausted the next turn. Yeah, it's the Chaos Gravity. It can be super, super swingy and powerful. It can also, yeah, kind of whiff. And you get to create situations and you have to time it just right. I think it's a really high skill card, to be honest, but I think it's really, really strong. And Weight of the World, you get to move an exhaustion token from your Phoenixborn to a target unit. So, like, this is interesting because it's a 1-die exhaust a unit, which yeah, I think that is valuable and that's solid. I mean, that's basically Astrea's ability, but on a card. It's just slightly worse because you have to spend a card in hand to do it, you know, you first 5 it or whatever if you want to play it in round 1. But yeah, the ability to open up Echo's ability again is where I think it has that added upside that's really cool. It is competing with Chaos Gravity. I do think that's like of a big downside. But the fact that Echo has like 2 really playable signature cards, one of which is very powerful and swingy, a super flexible, free ability and a mega big stat line, or not mega big, but like a really good stat line, makes him just super solid. I think he has so many different builds he can do, and he is just generically really strong. The one thing I will say that's like kind of awkward with him is that you are bound into sympathy or divine. But honestly, with this being a parallel cost and both of those colors being really strong and you only need one of them, it's really not that big of a deal. But it does limit his deck building. So I think he is very solidly A. I would maybe, I feel tempted to put him in S just because, I mean, what are his downsides? They're so small. Even compared to Dimona, I think his downsides are like pretty low. I think he's just a really high skill Phoenixborn. That's what makes him difficult. But yeah, I think I'm gonna put him in S. Actually, I think I'm gonna put him in S. I think he's above the rest here for sure, and he's up here with Cole in my opinion. Just like a full package, just great Phoenixborn. Okay, let's keep moving on with Fiona. Man, there's so many to get through. So Fiona, sadly, I think Fiona is our first B tier. Fiona's just, she's really a mess. Her ability to, filter cards. I like that it's free, but like, yeah, filter cards and reuse spell board, like ready spells and summons, is really cool. I think 5 spell board, would indicate a 6-5 split here, would indicate like, okay, maybe she's playing more like engine buildy, like kind of thing. And, that's where Summon Metamorpher kind of fits into. You have this book that can draw cards and summons like units that take a turn to evolve into something else, and it can be this flexible like unit guard or stalk. Really good generic unit that you want to like build a spell board around to support this. And then you have Mind Maze, which is this kind of a pseudo removal spell, but not really. It's just like it attacks their resources, it attacks their dice and cards. If you do it late enough in the round, it is a removal spell, but you're at that point you're killing like an exhausted unit. But still, all this seems to say Fiona wants to build an engine, build a synergy and combos and all this stuff, and like set up this kind of cool spellboard thing and do this late game thing. And then she has 15 life, and it really just, it hurts. I've been playing a lot of Fiona recently, and she just feels she just feels like inconsistent, and like she's torn in different directions. And so I think there's ways to play Fiona that are more aggressive, that play into the 15 life thing, but it just doesn't all work. All of her stuff like looks like it could be good individually, but it's just not cohesive. It's not a cohesive package. And I will say too, just anecdotally, that my experience with Metamorpher is that it just dies. And paying 1 basic for a unit that is like demands an answer before it turns into something is, I like that in theory, but in practice, like this just gets killed by the most inconsequential ping that your opponent has sitting around. It dies to like everything. It's kind of a liability. And then the Sun Scarab is good. I can't find good, like really strong uses for Moon Moth very often. I think Sun Scarab is really solid, but like the slowness of it hurts, I think. And then Mind Maze, Mind Maze is removal that's not removal and attacks. It's best in like first 5, but I don't know. It's just the whole thing. just doesn't quite work together very well. I think she's got so many cool things and cool ideas, but she's a little bit pulled in too many different directions to be consistent. And that 15 life really hurts. So I wouldn't say she's down here with Brennen. She's not like on that level. She's definitely B tier. She's not on the same level as these. Okay, now we get to talk about one of my favorite Phoenixborn and like one of the best Phoenixborn in the game, Harold Westraven. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm putting him top of S. I think he is, yeah, in my opinion, he is the best. 7-3, you know, that's the good, aggressive, kind of like super flexible battlefield stat line. 3 spellboard is more than enough. 16 life is low. And it is Harold's biggest drawback. It's his like one big downside. But when you think about his one big downside being not even as bad as Cole's one big downside, and the fact that he has cards to help with that downside, but we'll get to that in a second. Let's talk Hunter's Mark. This is an insane ability. It's just so powerful. It's a side action. It's free. It's a free side action attached to a Hunter's Mark, and the Hunter's Mark on a unit says this unit receives double damage, basically. And it also cannot be guarded against. Like, you cannot guard. It basically gives you stalk for whatever you want to attack that unit with. And I think Hunter's Mark is just very, very powerful. You know, you could kill knights for 1 die with this. A 2/1 attacker swing in and kill a knight. Not uncommon for that kind of thing to happen. It even works with, it says receives damage, not even attacks. Like, you can use it with like AoE and pings and all the other kinds of stuff. You can use it to kill things that normally are even outside the reach of like a 4 damage spell, like a 5 health unit. You know, you can Hunter's Mark and then play like a multi-gold or something. Double that, takes 6 damage. Like, the ceiling on this card is just, there is no ceiling. It just goes. The floor on the card is like, you know, if your opponent's playing a bunch of Swarm and they have like just a bunch of 1 health units, the floor is still, you can kill something really important that you need to get out of the way without your opponent being able to guard it, which is still big. I don't think you want to use this on a 1/1, but I think like this is undeniably just so flexible and so strong. And then if this weren't enough, you also get Consume Soul, which is a reaction spell that after you get the value out of that super crazy strong ability, you can remove 2 wound tokens and an exhaustion token from your Phoenixborn. You get to reuse this free, crazy strong pseudo removal spell again, and you get to heal, which is negating Harold's downside, his 16 life. You know, makes it like an 18 life or a 20 life or a 22 life Phoenixborn. It's really, really strong. And then on top of that, he got Full Moon, which has synergy with Hunter's Mark in a different way with Consume Soul. You can actually buff 1/1 units to be able to kill those knights. Or, you know, push damage to face or trade up or whatever else. And if you're going full, like a full moon, like all 3 of these, you can do like a swarm thing. And late game, you know, if you got like a raptor herder and hatchling and 1 other 1/1 unit, you can attack for, you know, 6 damage or whatever. Yeah, I think Harold's got 2 incredibly strong signature cards that both synergize really powerfully with one of the best Phoenixborn abilities in the game on a stat line that's really not even like, is totally respectable, with its only downside being a slightly low life total. Yeah, I think Harold is just crazy strong, and he's always been a really strong meta player. So he goes into S for sure, and I think he's going to stay up here, top of S. Yeah, that's Herald for you. All right, let's talk about Hope. These are out of order. I don't know why they're out of order. Hope at one point in the game, again like Brennen, I think Hope would have been considered like one of the best Phoenixborn in the game, because she totally broke the game with old Indiglo Creepers. That's been nerfed. Indiglo Creeper is Aradel now. But I still think Hope is like a really, really strong Phoenixborn. They have a 6 battlefield, 5 spellboard, which is that is a really interesting stat line. 6, 17, 5 is like they have like middle of the road life, so average life, average like average battlefield, and like a really high spellboard. Usually like one of those stats would be like a below average or a lower or whatever, but nope, just really good stats. They have duplicate, which this ability is like kind of crazy. It's the kind of ability that like impacts all card design for the rest of the game. Because yeah, this life value of one thing, you can, if you have a 3/1 out on the field, you can, for 1 die, create a copy of that 3/1 and punch and hit for 3. And yeah, it dies at the end of the turn, but like you can trade up with something. You can push damage with it. You can enable swarm group tactics with it. It's like really cool that you can just play a Raptor Herder, and normally Raptor Herder by itself is like, not a crazy threat. You can just keep them off that 3rd unit and keep denying that group tactics value. Hope can copy the hatchling and swing for 5. 2 dice to swing for 5 is really strong. And on top of that, like, I think maybe you'll be seeing a theme here. The signature card synergizes with a Hope's ability. So it's a reaction spell, and it scales up based on the number of attackers, and you deal damage to a target unit equal to the number of attacking units. If it destroys it, you draw 2 cards and change 2 dice, which is just incredible. It gives you tons of options, lets you set up reaction spells, and just not having to med a whole lot as an aggressive deck is great. Void Pulse is like a really powerful reaction spell. Like a reaction removal is just crazy strong. Yeah, there's some weirdness about like timing and stuff with his ability and how you use it, blah blah blah. I'm not going to get into the specifics, but Hope has a really, really, really versatile, strong. I haven't even talked about this, but like duplicate with Lightbringer is really good. You just get to abuse that, any kind of come into play effect or anything like that. Yeah. If you're running Cerulean Diver, you get to draw a card with it. Like there's so many different ways that this is really strong, and then Void Pulse just combos with that in a big way. Scrawler is kind of like a whatever, like it's a fun card to play with and to play around. 1 die 1/1 that can exhaust things. The more you have of them, the better, type of thing. Honestly, I don't see Scrawler a whole lot, and I don't think it's like that big of a deal for Hope. I think Void Pulse is just what you run in a competitive Hope list. This is more just like a for fun card. Maybe it can do some cool things, but I haven't seen it, and I wouldn't play it. I would just play Void Pulse. But yeah, I think a stat line that has almost no like real perceivable weaknesses, a very, very versatile, powerful, like honestly this could be a win con Phoenixborn ability, and like a really powerful reaction spell, puts Hope into, in my opinion, I think she's S tier as well. I think they. I think Hope belongs up here. They absolutely deserve a spot with these because again, there's almost no perceptible downsides to their kit. So yeah, I'm putting Hope in S. Whew, I can already tell you this is gonna be a longer video than I thought, and it is taking a lot of work, a lot out of me. My mouth is so dry. Let's go ahead and do another real quick here. So after Hope, we have Issa. Issa, okay, these are one of the 2 new Phoenixborn that were released with Ascendancy, and they're still so fresh and new. Like this expansion came out like a couple weeks ago. I'm gonna put Issa solidly in A somewhere. I don't know where. I have no doubt that Issa is like strong and good. It's just like the card pool again, just like we talked about with Arren. The card pool is like so limited right now. It's just hard to say, and especially with Issa, even more so than Arren, I think, is all about this charge mechanic and all about synergy. And so, like right now, I think that Issa is good because 5/18/5 is a really respectable stat line, above average life. You know, smaller battlefield, but a big spell board. You can do a lot with this. This is really flexible. The like draw 2 cards for a die, honestly, is pretty good. Like that's not bad. Like I like card draw. I think card draw can be really solid whenever you get like additional like effects out of it when it's not just draw. And this gives you card draw and this artifice die power, which is it's hard to evaluate just that die power on its own because it's completely context dependent, like what you're using it on. However, Brilliant Display is like a really tangible, kind of easy to see benefit here. Deal 1 damage for each charged card, each artifice die on cards you control. In my experience, the absolute floor for this card, it tends to be 3. So in my experience, it's 1 die to deal a damage 3 times. Deal 1, deal 1, deal 1. And that is like, honestly, that's really, really good. That's like, you know, like we're going to talk about Tristan later. But I think Tristan's signature card does the 2 dice to deal 1 4 times, right? This is 1 die to deal 1 3 times. I know it's not just that. I know you have to set up everything. I know there's interaction to think about and all of that, but like there are ways to make this less interactable. You can charge ready spells and your Phoenixborn card. Like you can put, you know, the charge dice on your Phoenixborn card and they can't really stop you from using it. If it's on a unit, they can kill the unit, but you know, the unit you're usually putting it on is Thunderhulk and it's a 3/3 for 2. So I think that, yeah, I think she's really cool and really flexible and has a really strong Phoenixborn card. And, you know, the draw too, there's a lot of potential here for like engine building and cool synergies and like ready spell, like building a big spell board, and who knows what all the artifice stuff is going to have in store for her. But for now, I think it's hard to say that she's up here, right? I think she's just like in this solid A category, like no real big significant downsides. Like the only downside being like the card pool, which is kind of similar to where I got Arren. I think I'd put her slightly above Arren, and I think I'd put Astrea probably above her. So it'd be maybe like this, or this something. But like she's over here with Arren, chilling in A, just solid. Okay. Let's keep going. James. James is a Phoenixborn that I don't have a whole lot of experience playing, but I know he can be very, very strong. He's like one of the most aggressive Phoenixborn in the game. because you can just swarm. You can just swarm the battlefield. This free, it's free dice, but it costs health. But he's got a pretty good high life total to start with, and again, that 7/3 is just a good stat line. But yeah, you can draw allies. You can search your deck, tutor allies, and then draw them, and at the cost of life, which is really powerful. It lets you do a lot of things with first 5 that other Phoenixborn just can't do. There's like an upper limit with how many bodies you can put on the board with most Phoenixborn, because it's not like a dice problem, it's a card problem. There's only so many cards you can first 5 and draw and play. But James can like do some crazy stuff. He can pull glory aspirants that also pull allies, and just like go crazy with tutoring really strong stuff. He can set up chant engines like really fast. That's not like one of the more competitive use cases, but it's really cool that he can do that. Ritualist, and then search for another ritualist, and then you can set up 3 chants in your opening. Really cool. No one else can do that. So I think that's really solid. I'd value this less than having removal on your Phoenixborn. It's I don't think it's as flexible as like, I don't know, it is as flexible as Echo's ability. It's just not as like, you still have to pay the dice for the allies, right? It's just tutoring and drawing, which is still good. But yeah, I think this is really strong. His Phoenixborn is great. His signature cards, I think Vengeance is terrible, personally. I think it's really bad. It's just like such a bad rate for what you're doing. You're paying an X amount of dice, you're destroying X units you control, and then you're adding 1 to the attack value of X target units. So you have to have a really specific board state to like maximize the value of this, which is like if you have like 3 exhausted units and 3 unexhausted units, and you destroy your 3 exhausted ones and add 1 to the attack value of all your other 3 and then swing, like that would be like a max use case. You can do it with 2, you can do it with 1, but like 1 die to kill one of your units and add 1 to something else is like not lighting the world on fire. I don't think Vengeance is very good, personally. I think it was suspect before James got a second Phoenixborn card, and now it's like even more so because Soulfire exists, and this card is, I think, really good. 1 die, again, we just talked about Issa. 1 die to deal damage like 3 times is really good, and this is like the same thing. It requires a slightly more, in my opinion, this is like a more costly specific setup. Maybe not. I think it's about the same, actually. I think it, charging cards as Issa is not really like a huge extra cost because you're doing it anyway, and putting allies in your discard pile is not a huge extra cost because it's something you're doing anyway. Removing them from the game is kind of an extra cost because you can't ceremonial power them back, anymore. But yeah, it's not like terribly difficult to get 3 allies in the discard pile. These James decks run like 20 some allies or something. And so yeah, you can remove 3 allies, and you can meditate this too. Like you can just med until you get 3 allies and then guarantee you've got the fuel for it if you're really looking for it. But yeah, 1 damage to a target unit they control, or 1 damage to a target Phoenixborn if they have no units. So it's a burn spell too. Can be a really potent one. Yeah, I think this is a really good signature card. And so James, I think James is really good. I personally don't know how to rank him because I don't have enough experience playing him or playing against him. But I think based purely on like, the criteria we've already established, like he has great stats. He has a a really strong Phoenixborn ability. He has a really strong signature card. His downside is, you know, easy to navigate and like kind of negligible. His life total is like the biggest thing you have to worry about, but even if you drop him by like 3 life, he's still competitive with other, you know, aggressive PBs. So I think he is top of A, if not S. But I think I'd put him in top of A personally, just because like I don't know. This is one of those things that's like, you know, this is my opinion again, and totally be wrong. James could be up here. James could be over here. I don't know. I think top of A is reasonable for James. But some people would say Hope should be down here. I don't know. This is what it is. It's a tier list video, guys. This is just mostly for fun. So let's just keep going. I should really have 2 tabs open for this, or open separate tabs. So Jericho. Jericho is interesting to talk about. I think, you know, this stat line is reasonable. Again, 17 life is average. 7 battlefield is good. 3 spell board is fine. It's not really a huge downside most of the time. Her prepare ability is really, really weak. Yeah, there's just really no way around it. It's just weak. I think if you're playing Jericho, you're probably not like you're not playing her for prepare. That's not why you're playing Jericho. You're playing her for his signature cards. But like why is this bad? I think you search your draw pile for a card, and then you put it on top of your deck. And if it was draw it, that would be like crazy strong, right? That would be like a cheap tutor like that is printed on your Phoenixborn would be wildly strong. So I think there, you know, it's put on top of deck instead, so that you have to spend extra dice to draw into it. But even with like all the consequential draw that's being thrown around, even with how rampant kind of like those draw effects are being, you know, spread out now, I still think that spending a die to set up your draw is, you know, the use cases for it are, you know, like you want to like find a specific combo piece, or you want to focus a ready spell or something like that. And most of the time you can just draw into them normally. There's enough card draw in the game now that you can just draw into them normally. If you really want to guarantee it, you can spend a die to do that. But then you're playing a 9 die versus 5 versus their 10 die versus 5, and puts you behind already. I think it's just hard to justify. And it puts you into time, which maybe you don't want to be in time with Jericho. Maybe you would rather play a different dice spread. I think it's completely reasonable to build a Jericho deck with no time in it. Okay, enough talk about Jericho. Let's talk about her cards. Blink is a really, really cool card that it can be very, very strong. It's basically a 1 die refresh. The side action speed, as far as the, sorry, it's not just basically that. It's a lot of things. But yeah, when you play it on your own side, when you play it on your own units, it's a 1 die refresh. The side action speed doesn't matter as much there, because the unit doesn't come back until the end of the turn. So you still have to wait. You can't just like refresh and then attack or whatever. But I think a 1 die refresh is still really good. Like that's really, really good. You can refresh like Realm Walkers and swing with them again, or like, you know, big units, and you can, and crucially, because it removes the target from the game, it heals them completely too. So if you got a knight that, you know, got a kill on a unit and has some damage on them and swung and got exhausted, you can refresh it, and it has all like its health, full health, and it's ready to attack again. That's just huge. But it can also be used on your opponent's units, which is really cool. You can blink them out of existence in order to open up a window to attack. That is really good. Now you're healing their units too, right? There's potential downside there, but I think this is like a really flexible, cool card that works on both sides of the battlefield. Has some really high ceilings, but like you do have to like build around it. You do have to like try and maximize it, and it's not always easy to do. Like it's not as straightforward as just a removal spell, but I like that. I think that's really cool. If you want just a straightforward removal spell, though, she has that too. So double edge, it's free, which free is like a crazy word in this game, by the way. It's a free side action, no dice card. You draw 2 cards and discard 1 from your hand, so it's net draw 1. You're filtering, but net draw 1. And if you discarded a card, deal 1 to a target unit, deal 1 to their Phoenixborn. So you get a ping on the board, and you get a damage on their Phoenixborn. You get some burn for free. Again, free. Like, that's so cool. That's so good. And it replaces itself. It's a card that replaces itself in hand, and you get to filter. You get to like look for answers, look for things you want to find. Like, I think this card is really, really cool. I like, if you look over here, recent decks, no one has published a deck with this, unless I'm missing it. I don't think anyone has published. It says 14 users have this card in 23 decks, but I don't see any over here. This is really new. I don't think a lot of people have experimented with it yet, but I think it's really, really cool. So Jericho, yeah, I'm gonna put Jericho in low A, upper B, low A, probably low A. She'll probably end up being like near the lowest of A, just because prepare, I just don't think is it. Like, the stat line's fine. Prepare is whatever. You're playing her for blink or double edge, but you can't play both. So there's some choices you have to make here, and like, they're both really cool, really strong cards, but they're not like universally as strong and powerful as some other Phoenixborn cards in the game. So playing a Phoenixborn with essentially no ability and like a mid stat line just for their signature cards, when their signature cards aren't even like, as strong as some other Phoenixborn signature cards who do have a great ability, I think that puts her in like the A territory. She's not as bad as like Fiona. She doesn't deserve to be down there, but A for sure. Oh my gosh, this is taking a long time, guys. Jessa. I am going to put Jessa in A also. I think she's better than Jericho. Where am I gonna put her? I'll put her right next to Astrea. I think these two are both like in a similar area, but I think Astrea is probably better. Yeah, Aradel. Yeah, no, this makes sense. So let's oh, I didn't pull it up. I'm sorry. Okay, Jessa. So here's the thing about Jessa. 19 life, excellent. This 4/4, not great, but like, it's a control style Phoenixborn, and like, you have ways to, built-in ways with fear to navigate this 4 battlefield. And she wants to kill things. She wants things to die. She wants her own units to die so that she can spend dice to deal damage directly to the Phoenixborn. She has a built-in win con that's maybe stronger than any other Phoenixborn that has a built-in win con. It's direct damage with no ceiling. You can use it as many times in a turn as you want. It doesn't exhaust. It doesn't have an action cost. This is like the ultimate kind of, once I get to the late game, I put you on a clock and you'd better win, or I have inevitability. Just, this is pure inevitability. And I think that is both unique and like really, really strong. Also, she has one of the best removal spells in the entire game. 1 die, you have to destroy a unit you control, which again, really not even that big of a downside at all, because you get to clear your battlefield, you get to scream. You get healing, remove wounds equal to its recover value, and you get to discard, such keyword, discard a target opponent or target unit an opponent controls. So you get around their destroy effects, you get around their life total, their armor, everything. It's just discard a unit. It can kill the biggest things in the game, and it can do so without triggering any kind of reaction. Fear is unbelievably strong. It's really, really good. It's why, in a lot of ways, it's why you play Jessa. I think that the inevitability of screams is also just like really good, but fear is kind of why you play Jessa, in my opinion. Playtime is fun, but I don't think it's like super competitive. I think this is a really flexible, cool card. I think like -1 attack is, you know, it doesn't look like a lot, but it can make all kinds of different trades like way, way worse. Playtime, it can neuter a knight, like neuter its ability to trade, neuter its ability to do what it's supposed to, like what it's supposed to be good at. And then, you know, when it declares as attacker, blocker, or guard, deal 1 to your Phoenixborn, like you can just leave that unit out and let it just sit there. Like, yeah, you can use that unit if you want to take burn damage for the rest of the game. And once it's gone, you get burn damage again. You have this blood puppet clogging up your field. I think there's a really cool argument for like a Jessa that just fills up your opponent's battlefield with like garbage and then burns them to death. But is that better than just always having the best removal spell in the game with healing available at any time? I don't think so, but it is cool. It's like a completely alternate play style that Jessa has access to. So yeah, I think Jessa, you know, comparing to Astrea is interesting because Astrea can't kill things, can't kill single targets as efficiently as Jessa can with this upside, with the healing, with the and Astrea doesn't have the same inevitability, but Astrea has like full board wipe that Jessa doesn't have. Jessa has to splash for board wipes, and Astrea has to splash for like more single target removal, unless she wants to clear her own board too, which is timing dependent and all that. And you know, Astrea may have to splash for some burn or like some inevitability or like have to play for fatigue, whereas Jessa can just like close a game. They're really similar kind of vibes, I think, just flip side of the same coin, this control style thing. And I think they're kind of both really solid, and they both have like, you know, fun alternate signature cards to mess around with that aren't, you know. But yeah, and they both have like the 2 most powerful removal spells in the game, I think, between the 2 of them. So yeah, really similar vibes. I put them right next to each other. I think it makes a lot of sense. All right, so in case you haven't noticed, I am wearing different clothes now. This video is taking a really long time to finish, and I'm having to shoot it over multiple days. So yeah, anyway, let's just keep the pace moving, and hopefully we can finish this up soon. Koji, let's talk about Koji. So Koji is has a really interesting stat line, I think. 10 battlefield is, you know, the highest number in the game, and it's like that's really big, and like you can do a lot with that. But at the same time, it is kind of overkill in a lot of ways. I think that you certainly can fill out 10 battlefield with Koji if you're spamming like a bunch of units that summon other units or multiple units at a time, but it's rare that you're ever going to use all 10 of this. And so in some ways this just ends up feeling kind of like 7 battlefield, 8 battlefield, whatever, like Aradel. It just feels similar in most cases, just because units will get destroyed, they will get picked off or whatever. 16 life is fairly low. 3 is, you know, again, I don't even know if we're going to talk about spell board a whole lot more anymore. So yeah, 3 spell board, kind of standard for like an aggressive battlefield based Phoenixborn, and 16 life is kind of low, on the low side. Accelerate growth. This is an interesting ability to talk about because its value is entirely dependent on like what you're using that status token on. And so Koji in a lot of ways is kind of defined by the cards that he combos with. One, like there's a lot of like really cool things you can do with this status token. You can build up Indiglo Creepers to get tokens and like trigger the Blossom ability and spam the Thorns. You can put status tokens on Huntmaster or Wolfpack Leader, his signature card, to keep those status abilities ticking away. You can use it with Guilt Link to immediately turn on a Guilt Link. There's a lot of different cool stuff you can do with the status token. It does sort of pigeonhole you into like specific combos and specific colors more often than not. But it can be a really cool ability. It's not like affecting the battlefield directly most of the time. So I wouldn't put it in like the same category as like removal, Phoenixborn with removal on their card, but it is really interesting and really cool, and the synergy can be really strong. As far as signature cards go, I think Koji has some really good ones. I think Lick Wounds is like very flexible card that you can use to either, you know, heal your Phoenixborn and get an extra status token ability out of him, which can be huge depending on what you're doing with it. Or, you know, you can remove 2 wounds and exhaustion from a knight and recharge and heal that knight. Just really solid value for 2 basic. This was, I think, like a good reason to play Koji for a long time. I think these days, this has such high competition with Wolfpack Leader that I don't know how many people actually run Lick Wounds. Maybe they run a split, but I feel like if you're not running Wolfpack Leader, you're missing out. It's a 2 cost 2/2, and it just spawns pack wolves. It spawns these 1/1 units. They have fade, they disappear at the end of the round, but it's just a battery for 1/1s, and it comes into play with 2 status tokens on it. Every turn you remove 1 and get a new pack wolf, and Koji can charge it up, right? There's other cards that can also charge up the Wolfpack Leader, so this ends up being a super high priority target to get rid of. And like if you don't get rid of it fast, it can spiral out of control and give an absolute crazy amount of value for 2 basic. And I think this is the main reason to play Koji. I think when you're talking about Koji in general, I think Koji's Phoenixborn card is I wouldn't say it's weak, it's just kind of middling, you know, like lower life total, context dependent, like synergy dependent ability that doesn't affect the battlefield. Smaller spell board. The battlefield is huge, like his battlefield is massive, but it's kind of overkill. But like his signature cards are really good. I think he has 2 really solid signature cards, and one of them is honestly can spiral out of control so fast. So I think Koji is very solidly A tier, and I think I would put him probably up here somewhere, maybe over here, somewhere in this region, next to Astrea, Jessa, and so on, maybe next to Dimona. Actually, him and Dimona are kind of like in a similar boats, in my opinion. You know, like similar stat lines and like similar kind of context dependent abilities that can be played around, but like really strong signature card. So yeah, I think Koji and chilling over here in A. Let's talk about Leo now. I love Leo. I think Leo is a really fun Phoenixborn. I've played a lot of Leo, and I think he's really underrated. So for one, 19 life is excellent, and especially on a 6 battlefield Phoenixborn. We talked about this with Echo a little bit, but 6/19/3 is like a really solid stat line. You get the benefits of having like a pretty solid battlefield size with like a control Phoenixborn's high life total, which is great. The Glowfinch this is one of the better Phoenixborn abilities in the game, in my opinion, because a Phoenixborn ability that affects the board is great, but having like a body on demand at side action speed anytime you want is really cool. Glowfinch is a unit guard, which can come in clutch in a lot of situations, and it plays directly into Leo's like overall game plan of like this kind of fatigue style, like mill and resource attrition style of play. So I think his Phoenixborn though is way more flexible than that. I don't think he has to do that necessarily. It's just Glowfinch is really, really solid. I think you can summon a main action summon a unit, and then side action protect it with Glowfinch, which is really valuable. His 2 Phoenixborn signature cards are Anguish and Gifted Rose. Of the 2, I think Anguish is better. Asterisk. I think Anguish is like really, really good. Oftentimes this is just 4 burn damage for 2, which is on rate for burn, but you rarely find it in such a like large amount at once. The thing is, it is an opponent's choose thing. So the opponent is always going to choose whatever abilities are the least impactful for them, the least bad for them. And a lot of people write this card off because of that, but I think that, especially in the first 5, I think this discard 1 at random, and at random means, they have less control over that part. That's actually a big deal, the random part. But 1 card at random or 2 dice of my choice from their active pool. So the random and the my choice really change the value proposition here. It makes it like the opponent's choose thing a lot less of a big deal, a lot less of a big downside, because you're kind of choosing when and where and what dice they're getting rid of, and the random card can be crippling. At certain points it can just be like, well, I'm just taking 4 damage. And yeah, like if you can't capitalize on that 4 damage, you're going down 2 dice to not affect the board that turn. If they're pumping all 10 dice into the board, maybe you have to work harder to like play catch up later on the board. But there are ways to do that. So I think that 4 burn for 2 is just really solid. And this actually, this is weird in that I think it's stronger in round 1 and in late game than it is in the middle game. In the middle game, it's kind of whatever. But late game, when they're running low on cards or running low on resources, they're trying to close the game, and they're running low on health, this gets even more impactful. So it's a weird card. It has like a weird kind of bell curve of effectiveness, or inverse bell curve of effectiveness. But I really like Anguish. I think it's really strong. Gifted Rose is not a card that I've played a whole lot with, but I can see the potential of it. It's just, the same kind of thing. It's like giving your opponent a choice. Do they want to lose their Phoenixborn guard for the rest of the round, or do they want to discard a card and lose a die to get it back? So similar kind of choice thing, similar kind of thing. But the key thing is it's side action speed, and you can get rid of their Phoenixborn guard at a opportune moment to take something out that really just needs to die. And I think that's really cool. There's not a whole lot of like Phoenixborn alteration spells in the game, so it's kind of unique, got that unique angle. Of the 2, I think Anguish is better, but I can easily see a mix of 2-1 with either of these, just depending on what you're building. As far as like pure power goes, I think both of these signature cards are pretty far behind some of the other ones we've talked about and seen. It's like more middle of the pack on pure power level. But I think Leo's stat line and the Glowfinch, like overall, the overall package of Leo is just very well-rounded, very balanced, and very solid. And he can be played a number of different ways. You can play a burn style, you can play fatigue, you can play battlefield focused. He's very, very versatile. So I'm putting him in A. I'm probably putting him I mean, he's certainly better than Aradel, I think, because of like the signature cards being better. Again, I don't know where these control Phoenixborn really will land eventually, but like I think he's up here. I think he's easily up here next to Koji, maybe above Koji, somewhere in this area. I'm gonna put him above Koji for now, just because I think he's more versatile. He probably doesn't have the same like ceiling, but I don't know. I'll put him behind Koji. Okay, we'll just put him right there. Okay, let's move right along to Maeoni. Right? She's next. No, Lulu's next. Okay, hang on. We're not in alphabetical order, so Lulu. Lulu has yeah, a 6/4 stat line is like really solid and flexible. You can do big spellboard stuff with her. You can run a lot of books. Do a 4-book type thing if you want. 16 life, lower side. But yeah, this stat line's pretty well rounded. Personally, I would like if her life was just like 1 or 2 higher, but you know, whatever. Bolster is a really value-packed ability if you get to maximize it. So it's a side action for and a basic die for a status token and a spark conjuration. And the spark conjuration is a +1 attack and this inexhaustible discard this to deal 1 damage. So the way you can think about bolster is it's 1 die at side action speed. It's 1 die for a status token and +1 attack, and then later 1 damage if it sticks around. That's actually really solid value. Status token, attack, and damage for 1 die is really solid, especially since you're not using any cards for it. But the problem is like it's all kind of speculative value. You have to be able to use that attack without the unit that you're attaching this to dying. So the unit needs to live to get max value. It has to live long enough for another turn to happen so that you can use spark. And it has to be able to use this status token in some way. So what kind of unit can do that? All 3 of those things? Not many, honestly. Not a whole lot of units can do all that. And it's rare that you're going to get all that value. But you'll get probably most of it. And the spark can just sit there, right? If you know, if they kill your unit, you still got the attack, you still got the status token value. You know, so like on a wishing wing, that could be a card and a +1 or +2 attack or whatever. Like you can get the value of that. It's like more so, are you going to get this main action ping? Maybe not, but maybe you will. And if you do, that's great. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting ability. It's just kind of like the value isn't always maximized. Phoenix Barrage was her first signature card, and I think it's still really solid, honestly. 3 basic for 2 damage to a unit, 2 damage to a unit, 2 damage to a Phoenixborn. So 4 damage total to units and 2 to a Phoenixborn. That's just on rate each time, right? 2 and 2 and 2. But being able to do it all in 1 card and to split up this damage is really powerful. You can, you know, kill a couple of small things, burn, or you can kill a knight, burn. It can, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different applications for this. But 3 basic for an action removal spell is pretty high cost. And so it ends up being a card that is kind of risky to play sometimes or kind of too expensive to play sometimes. But I think the value, just pure value-wise, is there. It's just, do you want to spend, you know, a third of your turn or a third of the round of resources doing this? Maybe, maybe not. Stamina Burst is her second card. And I think this is a really interesting card, but I don't know how strong it actually is. You can remove 1 wound token from your Phoenixborn and attach a spark. Again, spark can be really solid. Again, this has like kind of the same thing going on as her like her Phoenixborn ability, and that it has some speculative value here. Like, am I going to get max value out of the spark? Maybe, maybe not. But you do heal a little bit, and that's big. Lulu doesn't have a ton of life. The bigger thing though is like this pass the first player token. I think there's potential for this to be really, really strong, and that you can keep tempo up and like keep pushing the attack, and having the first player token and being able to just have the first action every single round can be like really strong. But is it strong enough to give up playing a Phoenixborn with a much higher impact Phoenixborn card and a much higher impact Phoenixborn ability and so on? I don't know. I think that's where Lulu is kind of like, she's the value is there. I think on all of her cards, I think the value is there. But it's like, how do you maximize it? How do you optimize for this? And it's harder than you think. So I think I would put Lulu. I think she's still an A. You know, 2 solid Phoenixborn cards, a solid ability, good stat line, whatever. I just don't know where I'd put. I think maybe over here, kind of like lower A, maybe ahead of Arren right now, but like not up here. And like her ability is not quite as generically strong as Aradel's, I think. I think maybe they're kind of like close in the same boat, but I think Issa's got a better thing going on right now, even with her limited card pool. So I'm going to put her right here in A tier. Okay, so let's keep this list going. By the way, this is like the 3rd break that I've taken in recording this, so I did move a couple things around. I worked on this list while I was at work today, and I decided I moved Astrea up a little. I moved Lulu up a little. I moved Issa up a little bit. I think this is where I want it to be right now. So let's just keep on moving along with Maeoni. So Maeoni, at one point, Maeoni was probably considered like the tippity top best, and really not a whole lot about Maeoni has changed in over time. Her decks, like, she hasn't been like hit by any huge nerfs. I mean, Molten Gold is kind of the big one, but like, and I think, I don't know if Maeoni uses Salamander Monk, but anyway, Maeoni's been mostly unchanged. It's just that the game has kind of evolved around her a little bit more, and also I think like a lot of players that played Maeoni a lot just kind of stepped away from playing her just to do something else for a while. But I think Maeoni is still very, very good. This stat line, like 20 health, is best in class. 5 spell ward is best in class. 4 battlefield is worst in class. But again, this is like control style Phoenixborn, where you're not really that concerned with having a huge battlefield. You don't need it. You run a lot of like removal, and you want your guilders to die to feed your summer silver snake, and you're building up a snake over time that just becomes the only win con you need, and you swing a couple times and you win. Command Strike is a really powerful removal tool built onto Phoenixborn, mostly because of how Silver Snake just scales up to be a really dangerous threat, and this attack value becomes, I mean, pseudo infinite basically with Snake once it gets big enough. 2 dice to basically kill anything on board is real at side action speed is like really solid. You do have to build up to it, but you can play other units that can like give you a command strike value even if your snake is not already built up. You can run knights and so on. There are actually some Maeoni decks that try to use try to rely on Silver Snake a little less and use some like bigger knight units and stuff with command strike, which is kind of cool. But really the reason Maeoni is a big deal is because of Silver Snake. This conjuration, just 2 dice for a 4 life conjuration with 3 recover that can scale its attack infinitely, and your opponent has to deal with it or it just becomes this big threat. And every unit that you of theirs that you kill with like AoE removal or normal removal or whatever, or even just by attacking, the snake gets bigger and bigger and bigger and just becomes this this just like game-winning threat on its own. And even if it's not swinging for like 1,000,000, it still demands enough of your opponent's resources trying to kill it that you can come out ahead on dice advantage just by summoning it and doing your own thing. It's just a threat that's that strong that it requires so much of your opponent to take it down. That sometimes just the threat of snake can be stronger than actual snake swinging. But Maeoni, yeah, Maeoni's like crazy strong. I think that let me look at my list and see where I put her. I put Maeoni in the upper half of A, right up here. I think right behind Dimona. Is that right? Yeah. So this is where I have Maeoni for now, and we'll see how things fill out with the rest. But you know, she's in the upper half of like the more powerful Phoenixborn in the game. So I think she's really solid. I think of the different like kind of control style Phoenixborn, I think there's an argument for her being best. Like the small battlefield, high life, you know, engine buildy, late gamey, whatever. I think Maeoni, like having that snake as a win con is a big deal. Astrea has judgment, and it's a super powerful removal tool, and she has like a lot more like hard control available to her for like a little more efficiently and doesn't have to build up to it. But she doesn't have like a game-winning threat built in. Jessa does have like a game-ending threat, like an inevitability built in, but it's a lot more expensive, and you have to be really careful about how you set it up and when you do it and when you start screaming. And both of them, I think, in some ways have to work harder to get I don't know. Maeoni's just like really proactive, I think, is the thing. Like she can just put out the snake and start doing things and start threatening your life total really fast. It doesn't take long for snake to build up to something that is truly terrifying. Whereas they have to like include their win cons some other way. And even Jessa has to like support her win con with additional burn or whatever. Doing all your damage through screams is not viable. You have to do it other ways. So anyway, that's kind of my thoughts on Maeoni. Let's keep moving right along. Let's go to Nameen Himtide. Nameen is like stat-wise pretty decent, generic, average, whatever. Kind of average across the board. It is nice to have a slightly bigger, like the 6/4. I really like 6 battlefield 4 spellboard. I think it's really versatile. Calming Melody is a super, super niche situational ability. You know, the draw 1 is kind of whatever. There's lots of ways to draw, but the place an exhaustion token on an opponent's Phoenixborn. Now that's a really powerful ability in a lot of different matchups. I think that can be really strong. The problem is that you also place an exhaustion token on your Phoenixborn, and because there's an exhaust in the cost of this ability, that means you're double exhausting your Phoenixborn to do this. Now, if you could just shut down your opponent's Phoenixborn ability every round for a die, I think Nameen would be a lot better. I think that she would see more play for sure. But double exhausting your Phoenixborn just sometimes doesn't really feel worth it. I mean, against some Phoenixborn, it can be strong. But the thing is, you know, a lot of Phoenixborn abilities cost dice to use. And so if you exhaust their Phoenixborn, sure, you remove that ability from the situation for that round, but you also essentially free up your opponent to use their dice in other ways, and you had to spend a die to do it. So you're going down a die, and they get to like reallocate their dice however is most useful for them. So yeah, you don't have to worry about their ability, but that only matters if their ability was going to be a big problem for you, a big headache for you. If it's just like, you know, if they can get that value any other way, then you're not really doing a whole lot. You're just drawing a card, and you can't even do this next round to like keep them on lockdown. So yeah, I think her ability is pretty weak overall, kind of niche. Let's look at her signature cards. So Encore is a free action spell recursion that can recur anything, which, and then you draw the card that you put on top. So the draw card is not really a draw card. It's just you're recurring a spell from the discard pile, or a card from the discard pile. Universal recursion with no restrictions is actually really, really cool. Like, most recursion cards have some kind of restriction or drawback or additional cost or anything like that. This is just a free recur anything you want from the discard pile. And I think that's really cool, and it does let you do some cool things, especially with some of the newer cards like Reverberate, which checks to see how many copies of Reverberate you have in your discard pile. It scales up damage as you have more in there. So if you can meta and get the other two in your discard pile, you can play the highest power one and then encore it back and play it again, and encore it back and play it again. That's probably the best use case for something like Encore. Another use case would be maybe like if you're really wanting to focus ready spells, if you want to pull back like some like really powerful high value units. But at the end of the day, this is still only just as good as any non-signature card in your deck. And so even though it's like a really powerful tool and it's kind of unique, it doesn't, it's just another card, right? It's not like doing anything kind of crazy and special and unique to this. It's just like, this is another card in your deck that you get to play another time. So it doesn't even feel like a signature card sometimes. So I don't know. I think it's not like super great, but it is really interesting and unique, and you can do some cool stuff with very specific cards. Surging Tempest is her new unique, and I've messed around with this a bit, and I really, really struggled to make this work. I think in theory, this is a very, very cool card, and it could be like the backbone of a deck, like a really cool just draw dice fixing damage engine thing that's also burn. But the thing is, because you have to discard a card for both of these abilities and you're only drawing one, like basically you blow through your deck super fast, and if you're trying to use the focus 2 to maximize this, you're just gonna mill yourself to death. You're gonna run out of cards in hand. You're not gonna be able to, even if you like run a really robust spell board, you're still probably gonna run out of ways to spend your dice because you're discarding all these cards from your hand. And you know if you want to focus it multiple times, but then you can't really afford to use all 3 copies of this spell multiple times because that's 6 cards around. If you double focus this to get this ability and you want to actually use all 3, which you do, that's 6 cards around. You can't even draw that many cards naturally to do it, and then you can't spend your dice. So what this kind of end up feeling like to me is just like like a frostbite that draws and, well, not even draws really, because you discard. So it's like a weird kind of raise 2 dice and deal a damage, but then you're milling yourself. I don't know. It's just, I could not get this to work. I'm sure that there's some like build that can like utilize massive amounts of like recursion to return cards to your deck and just like do a loop through a bunch, but I don't know what that is right now, and I don't think it's really achievable right now. And yeah, most people who have tried Surging Tempest have said it's just not that good. So that was a lot of time spent on Mee-NAY. What do I actually think of her? Well, a pretty weak Phoenixborn ability, an average stat line, and 2 signature cards that are not very good at all. I would put her down here for sure, in C tier. Uh-oh, did my screen go dark? Am I still recording my screen? So, Noah. Make sure we're actually, yeah, Noah. So, 7 battlefield is great. 4 spellboard. You actually don't see 7-4 very often. That's really cool. 16 life, again, lower side. not super great, but he's supposed to be sort of more aggressively tuned. Shadow target, this has like a similar like thing going on as Nameen's, and people are gonna be so mad that I said NAH-mee and not NAH-mee-NAY, but I'm sorry, I apologize. But this has a very similar thing going on as a Calming Melody, which is that you get rid of an unexhausted ready spell, you get rid of a key ready spell, but they get to sort of reallocate their dice. Most decks can find a way to spend those dice on other things. Now you might catch someone off guard. I mean, if they don't know what Noah does, right, and they're first fiving, and they plan their dice to be spent a very specific way, and you shadow target their ready spell, and suddenly they can't do anything with 2 of their dice, or 1 or 2, or even 3 of their dice, or whatever. Yeah, that's going to be really strong. You lock them out of those dice. You paid 1, like, and yeah, you don't have to worry about that unit. That can be really good. But the problem is that like people know what Noah does, so they see Noah across the table and like, oh, okay, so shadow target is a thing. I need to have a backup plan for how to spend my dice. Maybe that's overcosted first 5, or maybe that's a card that draws other cards, or maybe a way to refresh my ready spell, or any other kind of thing. Like, people will have ways to reallocate those dice, and then you spent a die to deny them an option, and they get to play with 10 dice and you play with 9. So it has that kind of same thing going on with it. I do think shadow target's slightly better. I think that there are situations throughout a game, like as dice are being spent, and if cards are being spent from hand, you can be like, at a well-timed shadow target could lock someone out of something and force them to do something suboptimally, or get rid of a problem unit you can't deal with. So I think it's a lot more versatile and useful than Calming Melody is, but it still has that same problem sometimes. But I think it is better for sure. Summon Masked Wolf is... I really love this card in theme. The problem is the book tax makes it a little bit too expensive most of the time. But a side action ready spell 2/1 unit is not to be underestimated. I think side action 2/1, like, that's really good. That people play Light Swordsman for a reason. Now Light Swordsman is an ally, and you don't have to have this setup cost in your first 5 and paying the extra die to get the book into place and so on. But Light Swordsman is also an expendable resource, and you will run out of them, and you may not draw them. Whereas Masked Wolf is just always there, always available. The focus is, I think, kind of a trap. I say that, but like, it's a trap if you're trying to go massive Masked Wolf. I don't think you want to run 3 of this book and like summon Masked Wolf, summon Masked Wolf, summon Masked Wolf, swings for 6. That I don't think is viable. I think that's silly. It's cool, but it's just silly. But I do think this is really nice for, just spending a power die instead of a class. Get your Masked Wolf out, and then maybe you play a different side action removal and then swing at the wolf, or maybe you combine it with Light Swordsman, or you shadow target, or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, any other kind of side action, you can get some good action compression out of this. I just wouldn't treat it as like this big combo wombo thing, and you're probably okay. But yeah, that said, the first 5 cost kind of sucks for Masked Wolf. It's a little bit unfortunate. But I think this still has a lot of potential. I think there's a lot of potential for a side action 2/1 summon, repeatable summon. That said, Shadowblade is incredible. Reaction speed, 1 die, draw 2 cards, and deal 2 damage is fantastic. I mean, that's like, that's up there with like Void Pulse kind of levels of, not quite the same like levels of power there, but it does like, it does have like some unique use cases compared to Void Pulse. because you can split that damage up. You can take out 2 chump blockers and draw 2 cards. You can also use it when your opponent's attacking you, which is really good. It's just any player declares attacker. So you can use it as a defensive tool if you're being hit by Swarm. I think Shadowblade is one of the better signature cards in the game. And so as cool as Masked Wolf is, and as much you like, I think it has a lot of potential. I do think that most of the time I'd probably rather run 3 Shadowblade than a 2-1 split, but you can definitely do that. But yeah, Shadowblade is really, really strong, and I think it bumped Noah up quite a bit in power level. I'm gonna put Noah and I'm gonna put him over here-ish. Let me see. Yeah, I think I had him like right over here. Well, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm gonna put him above Issa. Actually, I'm gonna put Issa down here just because I do think she has a lot of potential for like a lot of power, a lot of potential, but like the limited card pool right now, the newness of her and so on, she should just go down here below proven Phoenixborn for now. But yeah, I think Noah's like over here-ish. He could potentially, like, if he had a more useful, like more generically useful Phoenixborn ability, I'd put him up here. You notice that like all the Phoenixborn ahead of him have like really good Phoenixborn abilities, or Phoenixborn abilities that like have huge synergy with certain cards that can be really powerful. I think his signature guard game is great. I think his stats, are good, but the ability is what I think puts him below over here. Honestly, maybe that means he goes behind Lulu too. I do think Shadowblade's quite a bit better than Lulu's signature cards. They're honestly probably neck and neck. To be honest, they're probably right over here. I think I'll do no. Yeah, I think I'll do this. I'll do this for now. Let's put them right there. Okay, Orrick. Orrick is a fun one to talk about. So Orrick has honestly a pretty solid stat line for like a control late game oriented Phoenixborn. 20 life is best, but 19 is really good. And honestly, a lot of these control Phoenixborn only have 4 battlefield. 5 is significantly better. I find that like it's not like a linear curve. I think 5 is significantly better than 4. And it kind of plateaus, at higher battlefields. But Insight, this is an interesting Phoenixborn ability. It is kind of just draw a card, which is really boring, but it's free draw a card. It's not like the worst. But it's also not exactly draw a card. It's sort of filter draw a card. It can be kind of tutor draw a card in some ways, because you don't have to take the you can meditate one card at a time and just kind of like wait for the right card you're looking for. And you can only do that so many times before you run out of main actions, and eventually you're gonna not need to meditate anymore. But it is cool that you can kind of like filter your top 3 or 4 cards and find the one that you're looking for if you have the side actions to spare. So it's slightly better than draw a card, but when it comes to Phoenixborn abilities, it's not like super exciting. It doesn't really do anything for you on board, unlike a lot of these abilities. They do something for you on board, and Orrick does not. And I think that's a kind of a big downside. Concentration is people love to build Orrick decks because it's such a fun idea. Like, it's a really cool concept. This idea that you're trading short-term dice advantage for a long-term massive value in Awakened State. And then once you get to Awakened State, you can kind of just like nuke everything and burn the opponent to death and stuff. And that's really cool. I love the concept. I love the flavor of this. It is a very interesting card. it is not very competitively viable, unfortunately. So this, in order to reach 7 status tokens on your Phoenixborn, when the only way to put them on your Phoenixborn is spending 2 dice in a round. Well, you get 1 back, so spending a die, right? You're playing at 9 dice for the whole game, and you have to make it, 4 or 5 rounds at the minimum, right? I can't remember how fast you can get to concentration if you luck out, but basically, if you concentration, twice in round 1, and then you draw another concentration and you do it twice in round 2. Maybe you draw both and you do it 3 times in round 2, and then that means you're hitting awakened state in like round 3. But you spent, 7 dice in 3 rounds doing nothing to affect the board, just drawing cards and shuffling dice around and so on. That's just a tremendous amount of resources to spend in the first couple rounds of a game when you're like getting blasted by aggro or like beat down by mid-range or so on. It's just really, really hard to get to awakened state without dying. It would be easier if you could take it slower, but you can't really afford to take it slower. Maybe you can. Maybe you can run like tons and tons of removal and just like, extend the game out as super long way. Like that's what most of the Orricks that have done concentration have been. They've been decks that just stall, and for a little while, Orrick could utilize a card called Safeguard to exploit that card to like force stalling the game out. But Safeguard has changed with Arada, I believe, or something changed, but I can't remember. But Safeguard doesn't work that way anymore. It doesn't do what you want it to do with Neil. And so you can't really do that kind of thing anymore. And I just don't think Orrick's concentration Orrick is very viable. I think it's fun. I think it's really cool. I just don't think it's very competitive. Realization is his other Phoenixborn card, and this card I understand kind of even less in some ways. Like I get the idea. The idea is when you get to the late game, you are effectively immune to fatigue. And you get to keep recurring like the best cards. Well, not the best. It's random cards, but you get to like keep just filling your hand back up from your discard pile, and just like keep going in the late game after everyone else has run out of gas. And during the game, you get to draw additional cards. Now, if you stack these up, you're drawing like with your Phoenixborn ability and with Realization stacked up, you might be drawing 4 cards a round in addition to your 5 you normally get. You can have 9 cards in a round. That's really cool, but you're not going to be able to play all of them probably. Or if you can, you're running like a really low to the ground dice costs and such. But yeah, I just don't see this. I mean, it makes you immune to fatigue. But how is it helping you win? It's not really helping you win. It's not affecting the board. All it is just like this additional card draw and fatigue immunity. And I just don't see how that, combined with a Phoenixborn who already doesn't affect the board at all, with his Phoenixborn ability, is really doing much. So ultimately, what you have here is a Phoenixborn that wants to play a late game thing, but his whole late game plan comes online a little too late, or a lot too late, or just like you're spending the whole game your Phoenixborn stuff not really affecting the board at all, and sinking tons of resources into it and so on. So yeah, needless to say, I think Orrick is down here, probably below NAH-mee-NAY. Or NAH-mee-NAY, whatever you want to call her. But yeah, I think he's absolutely down here in C, unfortunately. Cool Phoenixborn. Cool theme. Don't think he's very good. I need a drink of water right now. Hang on. Uh-oh. I didn't bring one with me. Cut to part 10 or whatever. Let's keep this bad boy rolling. We've got Odette next. We've had a few stinkers here recently. Odette, I am happy to inform you, is crazy good. She's really, really strong. So 5-3 is not a very impressive stat line. 5 battlefield, again, kind of much better than 4, but like not a great battlefield. 3 is, you know, kind of the low end. But 18 life is pretty solid, slightly above average. I'm kind of out of breath. I just ran upstairs to get my water and came back. So, entered the fray. Very, very, very strong Phoenixborn ability. It's free, and it deals 2 damage to a unit. Free dice, rather. But it does damage your Phoenixborn equal to the target unit's attack value. So, there's a lot of ways that you can kind of like manipulate this to deal damage without taking damage yourself. The main thing is like any 2 health 0 attack unit just gets annihilated for free with Odette. And that's like, honestly, that's really strong. There's a lot of builds that focus around 0-2 units or have 0-2 units as a big part of their kit. And Odette can just eat them for free every single round. That's a really big deal. But you can also like utilize ways of like reducing your opponent's attack value to deal damage to a unit that normally would hit you back, but it can't. That's not as common, but it's like, you know, you can do that for sure. But the main thing is like raptor hatchlings and ruby cobras and you know, stuff like that, guilders, whatever. You can just eat those. No downside. But it's still useful to use on stuff that maybe like a Cinder Spirit or something. If you, well, Cinder Spirit's a bad example because you can side action summon that. But like any like 2/2 unit or something like that, you can kill that and take 2 damage. Like honestly, sometimes that's worth it. Because the potential like board advantage that you're gaining is worth the damage to your Phoenixborn. But yeah, this is just like really, really good. And I know we've talked a lot about side action removal and how powerful that can be, but honestly, sometimes main action removal can be better in certain situations because you can combine it with other side action stuff. Or you can use it to like buy a turn. You can't do that with side, and the side action costs stack up, right? The more you have of them, the more restrictive on your action economy it can be. Whereas this is always going to be useful. You can always just do enter the fray whenever, whether you have another main or whether you have another ability or not, right? So yeah, I think this is a top of the line, amazing Phoenixborn ability and a really solid life total on a stat line that honestly is not like, it's lower, but it's not like an insurmountable downside by any means. Sword of Virtue is like probably the best Phoenixborn and signature card in the game. If it did, like, if it just destroyed a target unit for 2, it would still be one of the best Phoenixborn cards in the game. But the fact that it can destroy a target unit or remove all wounds and exhaustion tokens, like a full refresh and a full heal on any unit, it is just extremely versatile, and it is very, very strong. And yeah, any deck in the game would be running 3 of these if they could. Like, I feel like almost, yeah, I feel like that's fair to say. Sword of Virtue would be everywhere. So this is like a really, really, really strong card. It's the whole, kind of one of the whole reasons you play Odette. But like, then we just talked about Phoenixborn is actually really good too. Armor of Valor, I actually think is like really cool, like a really solid card. If like you can guard and take less damage. that sounds really lame compared to like what we just talked about. That sounds really lame, but I think it's really interesting if you stack armors of valor that you can guard for free. But more interestingly, not only do you guard, take less damage while guarding, but you also take less damage when using her ability. So you can use that enter the fray, deal 2 damage to something, and not take that damage back, right? I think that's really interesting and cool and probably pretty strong. If not for the fact that you already have the best Phoenixborn card in the game, and like, why would you not run 3 of these? Like, I think Armor of Valor is very cool, but I don't think that I mean, maybe you run a 2-1 split. Maybe you run 1 Armor of Valor just as like a pseudo healing throughout the game. You can guard for cheaper and use your ability for cheaper, and that healing will add up for sure. I mean, that can essentially read gain 2 or prevent 2 damage per round, you know, and that is definitely not nothing. That is a big deal. It's just, do you want to go down to 2 Sword of Virtue is the question, because yeah, Sword of Virtue is just kind of nuts. Anyway, Odette, I probably not a surprise at all, but with like 2 really good Phoenixborn signature cards, one of them best in the game, and a solid stat line, and a really top of like best in class Phoenixborn ability, yeah, she totally goes up here. I think she is honestly up here with Herald, neck and neck to me. To me, I think I put Herald above. Most people would probably say Odette above. But I think they're both up here for sure in S tier. Very, very, very strong. So Rimea, or Rimea, not exactly sure. But Rimea. So Rimea had a kind of a big change recently. I say recently, this is a couple sets ago, but she had an errata in the Illusion Red Rains set that changed her pretty dramatically. She used to be a 4 battlefield, 20 life, 5 spell board, I believe, and her ability was completely different. Now she's 5/17/5, so she got a bit of a life nerf, like 3 life. Honestly, that's kind of a huge nerf. She's now average life. 1 more battlefield, which again, going from 4 to 5 feels like way bigger than just 1 battlefield increase. It matters a lot, especially for her signature card. We'll talk about that in a sec. But her new Phoenixborn ability is draw 2 cards. Look at 2 random cards in your opponent's hand for free. Side action. Card draw in this game, like card draw just for card draw's sake, honestly, is sometimes it's not very good, because you know you're capped on how many dice you can spend and a round, and you know card advantage isn't as important as in other games. It's still important, but it's not as important because everyone draws up to 5 every turn. But free draw 2 cards is really strong, I think. I think it's a really good ability because it lets you filter. It gives you a more flexible first 5. It lets you find, not filter, but it lets you find ready spells to focus. It lets you have, it lets you draw into more burn spells. Like if you're trying to just draw your burn to close out a game, there's lots of really cool things that just free draw 2 cards can do. And you get to look at your opponent's hand, and like that's a really big deal. Like knowing 2 out of your opponent's first 5 cards at the very first turn of a game, or your very first turn of a game, can be a really big deal. Knowing what they are planning, what they've got going on. There's a lot that you can guess and intuit about what an opponent's first 5 is based on their dice spread and their Phoenixborn, but you can't know everything. And this can be really, really useful information. Ancestral Army is a really high value card, I think, because you know, you're getting 5/4 in stats for 3, which is above rate for 3, like quite a bit above rate actually. But it's spread across 3 bodies, which is both a blessing and a curse. Like it's good and bad. It's good in that you can kind of make this threat more resilient by spreading it out. It's bad in that 2 of these bodies are 2/1s and can get pinged away really easily. But it's also got a little bit of upside because it's not just a 1/2 and 2 2/1s. It's ancestor spirits, and they get to filter cards in your hand. You draw a card, and then place 1 card from your hand on the bottom of your draw pile. What's cool is how this interacts with her new Phoenixborn ability. You draw 2 cards, and then you can play Ancestral Army. And if you didn't like those 2 cards, you can, shove them on bottom and get 2 new cards. So you can see 4 cards in your round 1 in addition to your first 5, which is really cool. But yeah, I think this is really solid. And now this was like, wow, this is such a good card. But in Rimea, because it's 4 battlefield, it's super restrictive. That leaves you with 1 slot open, and you can clog yourself really fast and that kind of thing. Now with 5 battlefield, it feels a lot more flexible. It makes a big difference for playing Ancestral Army. And there's a lot of cool things you can do with Ancestral Army because it's the Ancestor Spirit summons. It's like a 1 when this comes into play effect. Bouncing this to hand and reusing it is really fun. You can do some interesting stuff with this. But yeah, I think this is a really high value, solid signature card. It's fun. Seek the Depths is her newer signature card, and it is a 2-die, essentially a 2-die 2/3 conjuration. It does cost you a card to put into play, so normally that would be like devastating, like kind of dead on arrival for a like a first 5 card to discard a card. Like that would really suck. But because Rimea draws 2, it negates that downside. So essentially your Phoenixborn ability becomes draw 1 instead of 2 because you're discarding 1 to Soul Delver. But yeah, it's a 2 life or 2 attack, 3 life, 1 recover, which is conjurations don't often have like good recover values, but 1 recover. And when it's declares an attacker, it raises your dice or lowers the opponent's dice 1 level equal to X, and X is the number of status tokens on your Phoenixborn. Seek the Depths puts a status token on your Phoenixborn. So this really rewards heavy investment in Seek the Depths and using it as many times as you can. You can obviously just do it, the 3 times. You can play Seek the Depths each time you draw it. You'll get up to 3 status tokens, and then that Soul Delver is going to raise or lower 3 dice when it attacks. But like there are ways that you can, recur this card and keep playing Soul Delvers. You can get it back with like Shared Sorrow or something like that. Really, I think though the value of this card is just that it's a 2 cost 2/3. Like it has upside and it has some cool like synergy and stuff you can do, but the big thing is it's a 2 cost 2/3, and I think that's really just solid value, honestly. Oh, and I forgot to mention too, it shuffles into your draw pile when you play it, so you're always going to keep drawing. Like you're going to keep drawing more of these. I said, you play the 3 you have. Well, technically, it's because they go back in deck, you don't even, yeah. Okay, I'm actually going to re-record this part because I forgot that this draws or shuffles the card back into your draw pile. So, you don't just play the 3 you get and then recur them. You don't recur them with Shared Sorrow. They recur themselves. They go back into the deck and you can keep playing them, which is really cool. And it has it's cool that it protects you a little bit against mill. Now, you can still recur them if you mill them through meditation, right? That's the only way that they end up in the discard piles, if you get them in there some other way besides playing them. But you can recur them when that happens. But yeah, the whole, yeah, they recur themselves, basically. But yeah, I think this is really good. And, 2025 Gen Con first place was No Such Method, who brought a Rimea deck with Seek the Depths in it. So it was like an Ancestral Army split. Yeah. So that should tell you something about Rimea. I think she's really solid. 2 really solid Phoenixborn cards, a really solid ability, and a decent stat line. That would put her, up here for sure. Probably, I don't know. I think pure power level of like her. So here's the thing, like all of her stuff's really solid and versatile and useful, but her ceiling of like her best game plan I think is still lower than like say Maeoni or Astrea. No, maybe better, maybe lower. I don't know. I think she's somewhere over here, somewhere in this area. I'm gonna put her here for now. But I think she's up here for sure. Maybe, I don't know. Let's just leave her right there. The middle, the thing is, the middle of this list, all these Phoenixborn and A are like, especially towards like this side, they're all really close to each other. It's really, we're splitting hairs just trying to get them like sorted, but like they're all really close to each other. Okay. I'm gonna take another drink of water and then we'll go to Rin. Okay, Rin Northfell. Now, Rin is, I'm a little biased. I've always really liked Rin, and I have championed Rin for a long, long time. And there was a point where Rin, like, people just kind of thought he was, mostly trash. And I was like, no, I think this is really good, actually. I think Ice Buff is crazy strong. And I set out to prove it. And so I took Rin to 2 different events. And the first, my first year at Gen Con, I took Rin. And I think I went, I don't know, is it 2-2 or whatever, maybe 2-3, something. It wasn't great. And I didn't do very well. And I was like, man, I set out to prove Rin, and I didn't prove Rin. But then the next year I went to Gen Con and I was like, decided to bring Rin again. And I brought a build that I thought really showcased like why Ice Buff is really good. It didn't run any of Rin's signature cards. It was a signature cardless deck because I thought the threat of Rin's Fury was better than actually including Rin's Fury, and Shattering Fist had not come out yet. So I brought Rin, and I won Gen Con, which is really cool. That really, really felt good to like take a deck that like, is kind of off meta and, people don't think super highly of them and so on, and like win the big tournament of the year. Maybe not the big, but it was Gen Con. I won Gen Con with it. It was really cool. Yeah, that was a really, really good feeling. So why did I think Rin was good? Why did I believe him? Well, 6'4" I think is solid, like really solid stats. 17 is average life. So already this is good. It's not like amazing, but it's good. Ice Buff. This is why I love Rin so much. Ice Buff is a free ability that puts a conjuration on a unit, gives it +1 life. Super, super simple. But it's simple, but its depth is huge, and like the things you can do with it is huge. Very, very face value, just making things 1 health tankier, makes them more expensive to kill, or like makes them last longer. Sure. But where I really think Ice Buff shines is when you use it to change breakpoints on units to make them cost one extra die to kill, right? It's not just that like it's more resources, it's more dice to kill them. Obviously this is, you know, it's good on units with you know, high recover and so on. But I think like the way I used it, for instance, like putting it on a Frostback Bear puts it outside of Molten Gold range, puts it outside of can't remember, the Excavate range, so on. But putting it on like a 2-life unit and bumping it up to 3 is a huge deal, because now all those other 2-attack units that would kill them can't. And you have to invest more into killing these units. So like False Demon, I think, was a really good unit for Rin, because you can, you know, put it out there, get that ping ability in, and then ice buff it, and now it's a 2/3. And normally, like, you know, one of the downsides of False Demon is like comes in late, pings something late, and then gets eaten by like a 2/1. Well, now it can't. It can eat 2 units or cost 1 extra die to kill. So, and honestly, this has only gotten better since I took this deck to Gen Con. When I took this deck to Gen Con, there was no Shattering Fist, there was no Adaptodon, there was like there's a whole lot of stuff that's come out since then that is just really, really strong with Rin, and he's gotten so much better. So I thought he was really solid back then, but I think he's even better now. Let's talk about his other stuff. So Rin's Fury. Honestly, probably people don't really run this anymore because Shattering Fist is so good, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I do think the very existence of Rin's Fury is an advantage in and of itself, because it's this reaction spell that just is a complete blowout. Like, you play it after a unit you control is dealt damage, you prevent all of it, and then you destroy the attacking unit. So it's removal, and it's also protection, and it's a trap that enemies will fall into. And if they don't respect it, it can really, really ruin their day. I kind of like the idea of running a 2-1 split, just so that if Rin's Fury ends up in the discard pile, they have to consider that you have another copy. If they see one, they're like, oh no, it's a Rin's Fury, like whatever. It's a Rin's Fury deck, I had to play around this. But yeah, playing around it is an advantage to you already. So I think Rin's Fury is really cool, and I did use it in the first Gen Con tournament to like a huge success. I blew out a game and won based off of this card. I didn't use it in second Gen Con at all, but I think it's really solid. Shattering Fist is an incredible card. It's very, very powerful. Side action removal, 1 die, discard an alteration spell attached to a unit you control. So this can be, obviously the best use case of this is like if your opponent puts negative alterations on your cards, you can get rid of them. Most people won't do that against Rin because they know this is coming, but you know, that is a use case. But most of the time, you know, like, you're gonna pull off like you know, ice buffs, or you know, alterations on units that you know are gonna die, right? You know your opponent's gonna kill them anyway, so just convert that alteration into death. Or if it's an alteration that only gives attack value, then when you discard the alteration spell, you're not killing your unit. That's one of the downsides of like using it on ice buff, is it can lower your unit's life value, and if they already have wounds on it, it could die. But if it's like a fire adaptation, you get to remove the fire adaptation, kill something, and then you free up the fire adaptation to be used again, which is a really big deal. And yeah, it places 3 wounds. It doesn't deal damage, it places wounds, which is, again, such a huge deal. Like, it dodges Fate Reflection, it dodges any kind of like damage prevention that specifically says damage. So yeah, this is a really, really powerful card, and I think it's like one of the best signature cards in the game. So yeah, overall, I think Rin as a complete package is a beast. He's got a really good removal card. He's got a really, really solid free Phoenixborn ability, and decent stats to boot. I'm gonna put him like up here, right up here with James. I think they're both like they're in this like similar category of like really solid stats, free ability that's really versatile and useful, and an excellent removal card. So yeah, Rin A tier for sure. All right, more water. Okay, Rowan. Now this is the part where I make Mitch sad. No, I'm just kidding. I actually think Rowan's really solid. So Rowan is a 5/18/5. 18 is, you know, really solid, above average. It's not high for a control Phoenixborn, but it's, you know, it's decent. And then yeah, we've talked about stats enough. I can just kind of like say, hey, you know, here it is. So his Phoenixborn ability is really cool. It basically lets you replay allies that have died, and use their interplay and on death effects again. They don't stay on the battlefield. They come into play on the battlefield and then destroyed immediately. So you just burn them up. But this has some really cool implications with certain cards, especially cards that have both an interplay and an on death, which I'm trying to think who actually has that. I'm not sure off the top of my head if any cards have that, but any cards that have interplay or on death are things that you want to look at with Rowan. Probably the biggest one, the most ubiquitous one that is played with Rowan is Rising Horde. It's the 1/1 for 2. Whenever it dies, you create 2 fallen, like two 1/1 conjurations. And so when it dies, you get the 2 fallen, and then you can exhume and get 2 more fallen. So that's like 4. That's 5 1/1s for 3 dice and 1 card. Is really, really solid. But yeah, you can do this with other stuff too. You can use Pain Shaman to get a ping and a heal. You can use it with Anchor Knot to get a ping. You can use it with Fire Archer to get burn. You can use it with Ritualist to hunt for more rituals, like tutor rituals up. You can use it with Lost Shepherd to get a unit or get an ally from the discard pile. There's a lot of different like really cool use cases for this ability. And I think as more allies come into the game with interplay and on death effects, this will get even better. But yeah, it's really, really solid, really useful. The intended use case, I think, was use it with allies that draw cards when they come into play or die, to dig for Discovery. So Discovery is like the whole reason you play Rowan for the most part. He did get a new Phoenixborn Signature card that I think is really cool. But like this is like the main attraction of Rowan, so to speak. And it's an action card, costs a die, and then you attach a red raindrop conjuration to your Phoenixborn. And these red raindrop conjurations, there's 3 of them. At the end of the round, you deal 1 damage to a target unit. So it's short term, you know, card disadvantage, you know, spend 1 die, for long term board control. You get it at the end of the round, so it's like it happens late after things have already gotten their value and stuff, so it's slightly less valuable damage than a normal 1 damage, but it's still really good. And it stacks, right? So if you get 3 of these red raindrops out, you're going ping, ping, ping at the end of every round. Ping, ping, ping. That's a lot of free damage that builds up over the course of a game. You may deal like 11 or 12 free damage over the course of a game with red raindrops, which is a lot of damage for 3 dice, right? But that's not all. Once you get 3 red raindrops on your Phoenixborn, you also summon the Reborn Chimera. You get a 4/4 overkill 3, right? And on top of that, it also resummons the Reborn Chimera at the end of every round. So you get this kind of gradual building up board control engine as the game goes on. And eventually, once you hit 3, you get a 4/4 overkill 3 every round. Like it dies, it comes back. It dies, it comes back. And it's just this never ending threat that you can block, but it's still gonna kill you, or it's gonna hit you for 4, and yeah. Yeah, that it's a really cool little thing. And also it should be noted, because these are end around triggers, they combo with oh crap, what is it called? Era's End. Thank you. Thank you to no one. I thought of that. It combos with Era's End, so you can use it to trigger end of round effects, and you can re-trigger raindrops. You can immediately get that Chimera back out. Very cool card. The thing is that it is pretty difficult to get Discovery going consistently early. Now, there's been a lot of like people that have experimented with this and tried to like break it, and I think Mitch B on the Discord has been like a Rowan fanatic over the last couple months and just really been pouring a lot of time and effort into trying to turn Turbo Rowan into a thing where you go hardcore on Turbo Discovery and try to get a Reborn Chimera on round 1 or round 2 or whatever. And it's cool, but it's all in, and it really is a glass cannon. It's really fragile. And you can play it slower. You can play Rowan more slow and just kind of build up naturally, but sometimes you just don't get the red rain, like just due to luck, pure luck, pure bad meds and so on. You just don't get the red rain engine fully online, or it comes online too late and you die. But I think just face value, there's so much value in this, and it's a really cool mini game, and I think it's actually can be really strong. Cataclysm is his second Phoenixborn signature card. It kind of gets rid of the whole mini game aspect for just a really, solid removal spell. It's a 2-die AoE, deal 1 damage to all units and Phoenixborn. That does hit you. Hits your Phoenixborn too, which that's a huge downside, but it is what it is. But if it destroys at least 2 units, you get 2 1/1s. And not only is it 2 1/1s, but they mill your opponent. They discard card off the top of their deck. So it's kind of a late game kind of control focused thing. It's not nearly as all in on like this kind of one idea as Discovery, but it's really cool. And like an AoE spell that kills a bunch of stuff and gives you bodies is honestly really solid, really strong. But yeah, a lot of people really love Discovery and just want to play for the Reborn Chimera. As far as power level goes for Rowan, I think he's kind of a hard one to judge. I think he's pretty middle of the pretty middle of the pack. Sorry. I think I put him like somewhere in here, with Rimea and Astrea and so on, like somewhere in this area. Because yeah, I think Exhume's really flexible and you can do some really strong stuff with that. The combos are kind of niche, like what you can use it with is kind of niche, and it's predictable, but it is really strong. And Discovery can be very powerful, or it can whiff, but even if you don't get the Reborn Chimera, it's still like a really solid round around engine. And Cataclysm is just a really good AoE removal spell, which is sweet. So I think he has a lot going for him, and he has good stats. It's just his consistency is the thing. Like, why is he not up here with Maeoni or Dimona or whatever, since he has all this good stuff? I think it's just a consistency thing. He's just not as consistent, and so he ends up kind of being down here a little bit. But he's really cool and really good, I think. More water. Keep it moving. Saria. My voice is giving out. Saria Guideman. So this is a 5/24, 20 life, excellent life, 5 battlefield, great. You want to see that on a control Phoenixborn, it's better than 4. Heart's Pull is a 1-die draw a card and mill a card from your opponent. Not the most exciting Phoenixborn ability. It's not doing anything for you on board. It is sort of supporting a fatigue win con. It's not like a lot of mill. It's, you know, kind of inconsequential most of the time, but it can add up over time, especially with other mill. And the card draw is nice, but really this Phoenixborn ability is not like setting the world on fire. It's just like, it's decent. It's decent utility. You don't really want to use it all the time, but it's there. Where Saria's power really comes from, in addition to this 20 life, is her signature cards. So Seaside Raven is a ready spell, 3-die ready spell, which not very common. And you get a 3/2 quick strike unit. And it has a come into play, destroy a target unit with a life value of 2 or less. Just destroy, not deal damage. Can't fate reflect this, you can't prevent this damage. It's just gonna kill something. And that is honestly very strong. Yeah, the 3 dice is a big upfront cost. It is all basic, which is really nice to have that kind of flexibility in dice cost. But yeah, it's a bigger upfront cost, but you are pretty much guaranteed to get some dice advantage out of this, because killing a 2-life unit means most of the time you're killing a 2-die unit at least. So you're already like, you know, that's 2 dice, 2 dice. So you spent 1, right? And you have this 3/2 unit. Sorry, a 1 delta, you know, between the two. And then you have this 3/2 unit that can potentially kill something and still stick around, and you still have to deal with it. So the potential for our Seaside Raven to 3-for-1 your opponent and to go way dice advantage heavy is there. It's absolutely there. And the floor is pretty high too. Like, it's a really decent floor and a pretty insane ceiling. It does have one really, really, really significant downside, which is Ice Trap. If your opponent ice traps a Seaside Raven, then with, you know, depending on what it killed with its on come into play ability, you break even on dice. But even that's still breaking even on dice. That's still not bad. But the ice trap can be a pretty significant counter to this unit. Ice trap did get, for what it's worth, nerfed. It's a power side now, so play around that. You can spin down the nature dice to prevent it. But yeah, I think Seaside Raven is just an incredibly strong conjuration. It's really, really solid. And the cool thing about Saria, something that kind of pushes her power level up, is that her signature cards can be played together without a whole lot of opportunity cost, because you can still play like Seaside Raven and get the value of that book being available every round and still play 2 copies of Willpower. Willpower is a 1-die, essentially nuke a unit. Like it says, you know, deal damage to a target unit opponent controls equal to the number of cards in your hand. So when you play this in a round is going to affect how powerful it is. The later you wait to play it, the less powerful it's going to be. The more cards you spend out of your hand, the less powerful it's going to be. But even if it's just, you know, 2 damage for 1 die, that's still pretty good, honestly. 2 damage for 1 die to just like kill something, a 2-life unit is not bad. 3 for 1 die is great. That's really solid value. Obviously the nuts is whenever, you know, they have an unexhausted knight out there and it's top of round and you play Willpower, you have 4 cards in hand and you just obliterate that knight. That's obviously, that's a top of the line value. And you can use Saria's ability, Heart's Pull, to draw a card and beef up Willpower even more. You could top of round kill a 5 health unit, or, you know, wait a little bit to kill that knight. So yeah, I think Saria is pretty insanely good. I think she's right up here with Rin and James and so on. Honestly, I'm really tempted to put her like top of A, to be honest. Just because, you know, these 2 Phoenixborn abilities can be, like, they can be really strong. Well, I mean, Heart's Pull, honestly, yeah, they're all kind of equal here. They're all kind of equal here. Because I think Heart's Pull is like weaker than Ice Buff, but I think Saria's health is way better than Rin or James, right? That I think I think her signature cards are better than them because she gets to run like essentially more of them, more powerful signature cards. So weaker ability but higher stats and better signature cards. I think she goes here, right here at A. She could honestly maybe even be bottom of S or right up here with Hope in this area. I don't know. I really don't know. I think with 5 battlefield, she comes down here, maybe, but she's in this area, somewhere over here. All right, enough of that. Enough blabbering on about Saria. Let's move on to Sembali. So Sembali, very similar stat line to Saria, just 1 life less. So that's really solid. Gift of Wings is a refresh, but only on allies. And it also adds this interesting little can't be guarded against. So you can't Phoenixborn guard it, you can't unit guard it, the attack again that it's making. It's side action speed, so you get to refresh it and then immediately attack. That's actually a pretty big bonus compared to other refresh abilities in the game. A lot of the refresh you see in the game is main action speed, and so you can't attack with the unit the moment you refresh it. The one big exception to that rule is Adrenaline Rush, which is a 2-die side action refresh ability. It removes an exhaustion token. It also deals a damage to that unit, so you can't use it if that unit's like 1 damage away from being killed. But yeah, they're very similar here. It has the guarded against thing is, you know, it's good, but it's kind of like not always relevant. If they've already used their PB guard for the turn, then this is basically doesn't matter. Or they don't have any unit guards. But yeah, is this good? Honestly, I mean, yes, but it's not Phoenixborn good. Does that make sense? Like, it's good. It's good in that it doesn't require you to run a card, and it's kind of always online on your Phoenixborn, and that's cool. It's bad in that it's telegraphed and that it doesn't actually provide a better dice value typically than other refresh cards, and even provides less value overall than some refresh cards. There are cards like Red Flower that give you the refresh and deal a damage. There's something like Undaunted, which gives you the refresh and gives you stat boosts on the unit. This doesn't give you any additional upside except for this guarded against, which is again niche. So is it good to have a below rate refresh ability that you don't have to spend a card for and is like on your Phoenixborn, but is also telegraphed, but also costs basic dice? I don't know. And it's side action speed. I think it's good. I just don't know if it's Phoenixborn's like Phoenixborn ability good, you know? It's not like splashy, like, whoa, that's like how I value. It's just good. It's just okay. So yeah, what about her Phoenixborn signature cards then? Purifies a 1-die card. You have to target an ally you control and put it into your hand. And if you do, you destroy a conjuration an opponent controls. This is very restrictive. Very, very restrictive. Honestly, a lot of the conjurations people play are, you know, 1-die conjurations. There's some that cost 2 here on occasion. Sometimes you'll even have like Frostback Bears. I think when people were playing Frostback Bears a lot, this maybe looked a lot better. But even still, you have to have an ally on the board, and ideally it would be an exhausted ally because you want to get value out of that ally before you bounce it back to hand, right? So that you can replay it, get an interplay ability again, refresh it, whatever. But it has to be an ally, and you really want it to be exhausted. and your opponent needs to have a conjuration, ideally that costs more than 1 die. Otherwise, you're just breaking even. And that's just like really a lot of restrictions. A lot of ifs to line up in order for this card to be above rate. And I think it's just too inflexible. Yeah, sadly, I think it's just too inflexible. Not a very good signature card. Dark Reflection is kind of equally in a weird place, because on the one hand, it's a 3/3 for 2 with 2 recover, which that by itself would be really good. Like, that would be really strong. An ally that's a 3/3 for 2 is very solid. It has this ability, which is side action, deal 2 damage to a unit, target unit opponent controls. It's a weird one, man. It's really weird because, you know, it's worse than just attacking in the unit. Because you don't get that 3 attack on it. So it can't kill 3 life things like the Dark Reflection can. However, it can get around unit guards and Phoenixborn guards, which is good. However, it can be prevented or fate reflected or so on, which is bad. And it exhausts your unit, which is also not great. So it's like, okay, is this good? Is Slay too good? I don't know. I mean, it leaves a 3/3 on the board for your opponent to deal with, but you're paying 2 dice to kill a 2 die, or maybe a 1 or not a 1 die. You're paying 2 dice to kill a 2 life unit, maybe, and then leave behind a threat. And like, okay, that's value. They still have to kill it. If that was all this was, this would be a really good card. If all it did was have this like kind of, you know, sometime useful ability and it was a 2-cost 3/3, that would be very good. However, it has this downside. When this unit's destroyed, exhaust 1 die in your active pool. Okay. So now you use the Slay ability, you kill the unit, you leave 1 behind, and you're like, haha, I've killed 1 of your units, I leave mine behind. You have to deal with this. When they deal with it, you go down another die in your active pool. And now suddenly you paid 3 dice to kill a 2 life unit, and then they paid to kill yours. You're probably breaking even. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they had to spend significantly more to kill this, but like maybe you're breaking even. Maybe you got 1 die advantage. Okay, that could still be good. But if you cannot, and like, okay, like you can play around this, right? What if you play Dark Reflection really late and you have no dice in your active pool? Well, now they can't exhaust it. Cool, that's a cool way to play around this downside. If you cannot, you place 2 wounds on your Phoenixborn. So now you're taking damage. Now when they kill this thing, you're either losing dice or taking damage. And I think it's just all adds up to this being a little bit too much. Like, it just feels like too many downsides and restrictions and whatever for it to have its best use case, right? And it can be a serious liability. You can't play this late in the game, you know. When you're down to getting down to the very late game, and your opponents and you are on really low life, and you're getting close to the end of the round, and you're like, I've got this 3/3, I can play it and I can swing with it and kill my opponent. But if they kill it, I die, and I have no other dice in my pool, so I can't, like, you know. Anyway, so what do I think of this card? I think a 3/3 for 2 is honestly strong enough that it's probably good and not bad. It's not bad. It's probably good. There are probably situations where this is gonna be really solid. It's just there's so many ifs, there's so many questions, there's so many restrictions and whatever that I just don't know. It's certainly better than Purify though. And you can, to be fair, use it with Gift of Wings to decent effect. It's just, man, that is really expensive. That's 4 dice. Potentially 5 if they kill it early in the round. That's a lot to sink into using a 3/3 twice. So yeah, Sembali, I think she is right next to Fiona over here. They have very similar vibes, right? They have like cool signature cards with cool ideas and like some situational stuff going on, but like too many just like anti-synergies and weird downsides and restrictions and stuff. But maybe I put her above Fiona. I'm not sure. I don't know. She's somewhere over here. Also, now that I'm looking at it, I kind of wonder if Jericho doesn't belong down here too. Just because we talked about this before, but like her Phoenixborn ability is not very good. Her signature card, Blink, can be really good. It could also, I mean, yeah, I mean it's just a refresh, which can be really solid. Double Edge also can be really. No, I guess she does have better signature cards. We're just gonna leave her up here. Yeah, we're just gonna leave her up here. Fewer downsides. Okay, man, we only got 3 left. We can do this. Only 3 left. Let's go to Tristan. Yeah, Tristan. Oh, I'm not on Phoenixborn. More water. Okay, Tristan Darkwater. 9 battlefield. Holy smokes. That's high. Like I said, with Koji, I think it kind of like plateaus a little bit in usefulness. But, Tristan can use this battlefield better, I think, than Koji can, because he can utilize the Prism Tetras, which summon 3 0/1 units, and you can increase their attack value. They get attack value when they attack. Oh gosh, it's been a while. Anyway, they can attack for 2 with Magnify. So yeah, you can be really aggressive and use that wide battlefield to your advantage with these Prism Tetras. So the 9 battlefield actually is kind of relevant for Tristan, more so than Koji. But 17 life average, 3 spell board, what you'd expect. Magnify. I think this ability has way too few use cases to be like what I would consider like a really good ability. I think the use cases it has, the specific niches it has, can be really strong. The main one being Prism Tetras. You know, if you get 3 Tetras out and then you magnify them and you attack for 6, like that's a big deal. That's really good. But it's not like super flexible. It doesn't have a whole lot of other uses. Like you can increase a unit's terrifying so that it can't be blocked by like 2 health units or something. Or 2 attack units rather. Whichever one it is, health or attack. I think it's attack. Anyway, you can what are some other ones? You can well, let's see. Does Ninja say any? Oh yeah, Ruby Cobra can mill 2 and get a +1. Yeah, Vampire Bat Swarm and Raptor Herder group tactics. You can buff their attacks. That kind of stuff is good, but it's not like amazing. It's solid. Hard to really maximize this with the combined life value. Hard to maximize it. You can do like because it's like life value up to 3. You can do like Realm Walker to place 2 exhaustion tokens on a unit instead of 1. That's kind of cool. But yeah, it's just there's too few cards that you can use this with, sadly. So yeah, Tristan bad, huh? No, because he got Tsunami Shot, which is insane. 2 die. It can kill a knight. It can AoE. It can kill 2 2-lifers. It can kill a 3-life and a 1-life. It can do all kinds of stuff. It can mess up Fate Reflection. It can. It's just like there's a lot. This card is very, very powerful, very flexible, very powerful removal. I think next to really the only card that in the game that it looks like even remotely like less good against is Sword of Virtue. Um, sometimes, because Sword of Virtue gives you that like full refresh thing where you can like refresh a unit and give it all its health back and so on, which is a huge upside. But Sword of Virtue can also not do what Tsunami Shot can do, which is kill a bunch of 1/1s and or raptor herders and hatchlings and so on, and like nuke a swarm. So in some ways, Tsunami Shot and Sword of Virtue are like tied for the best Phoenixborn cards in the game. So yeah, that's really solid. Summon Ocean Eyes is his new one. I don't have a lot of experience with this card, but my gut says it's basically binder fodder because it's competing with Tsunami Shot. And yes, it's a book, so you can do the whole 2-1 split thing. Are Ocean Eyes good enough to get rid of the third Tsunami Shot? Let's see. You get 2 basic, you get 2 1/1s that, when declared as an attacker, deal damage to a target wounded unit. Well, how many wounded units do your opponents have? How common is it for units to be sitting out with wounds on them long enough for you to swing with your 1/1s and do the thing? I don't know. You can magnify this, to be fair. You can deal 2 damage to wounded units. So if you spread the wounds out and your opponent's running units with higher life, you can, magnify, swing Ocean Eye, and finish off a couple of knights or whatever, big beefy units. That's going to feel really strong. But what's not going to feel strong is whenever you summon your Ocean Eyes and your opponent has no wounded units and everything on his battlefield has like 1 life. Because then they can't be wounded without dying, so it's no different than a ping, but it can't actually target them, so it can't ping them, and you just get basically Mist Spirits. And that's kind of lame. So are Ocean Eyes good? In some situations, they are incredibly strong, but in a lot of situations, they're going to be Mist Spirits with extra steps. So is that good? Is that better than Tsunami Shot number 3? I don't think so. Personally, I don't think so. I think if you're playing Tristan, you probably just run 3 Tsunami Shot. Could be wrong. Maybe Ocean Eyes just that. But then you have to first 5 it. That's the thing. You have to first 5 this in hopes that your opponent is playing the kind of deck where this would be really useful. Whereas Tsunami Shot is just always good. So Tristan, is he good? Abso-freaking-lutely he is. What tier do I put Tristan in? I put him right up here in this area. I think personally, I think Rin's better. Because his Phoenixborn ability is more like universally useful and frequently can force like more dice advantage and stuff than Tristan's. But yeah, if it was just purely on Phoenixborn signature cards, I think Tristan would have the advantage. But I think they're both over here. These 4 are kind of like all in like a really close knit spot here in the top of A. Okay, Victoria, fan favorite Vicky. 5/18/5, decent, solid. Like 18 life is good. That's above average. 5 battlefield, 5 spellboard is pretty flexible. Surprise is bad. Just on its face, by itself, surprise is horrible. It is really, really bad. Because you're paying a die to potentially do absolutely nothing. It's completely random. You could roll this. You could do this in roll. You could even do it and like help your opponent. So yeah, I think this is just complete nonsense most of the time. There are going to be situations where your opponent has like three or four power dice and a bunch of stuff lined up, and you're really trying to dodge reactions, and so you re-roll them, and it's like, wow, I rolled no power sides. I took away all their reactions at side action speed, and now I can do my thing without interaction. How often is that going to happen? Not very often. How often is this going to completely backfire on you? And, you know, sometimes. How often is this going to be basically a nothing burger and you paid a die for it? Frequently. So I think surprise is really bad. But, big but, you can use this with, I can't remember the card name now. Why am I forgetting it? I'm going to look it up. Keepsake. There we go. You can use it with Keepsake, which when opponent's dice are re-rolled, you put a token on this card, and then you can turn it into a removal spell. So in a way, in a roundabout way, you play Keepsake, and then you surprise, and then use Keepsake. You re-roll 4 dice, right? This becomes a deal 4 damage for a die, and that's essentially like the same kind of rate as a Ping Fester or some other 2-die removal combo, right? So it can also still give your opponent upside. That to be completely clear, like it can still give your opponent some kind of benefit, but it does turn Keepsake into a really powerful removal spell. So you can kind of think of Surprise Keepsake as Ping Fester in some situations, and that really does make Surprise like quite a bit better. You know, you do have to run 3 of these in your deck, or however many of these in your deck that you plan on using Surprise, but yeah, that is really not that bad. Copycat. This card is pretty bad. Pretty hard to use. It's a reaction spell that lets you copy an action spell or a Phoenix ability that your opponent did. The thing is, the situations in where copying the same thing that your opponent just did with an action spell are useful are so few and far between. There's so many times where Copycat's just gonna sit in your hand and not be useful, or maybe like it could be useful, but like the way that the action resolved, like what if it's an AoE? Okay, they Nature's Wrath, and you can play Nature's Wrath again, and like you kill their stuff, but then you killed your stuff that would have survived or something, or they you know, they play a removal spell and you want to copy it to get that value, but they don't have any units. Or, you know, any number of other things. It's just really situational and really random, really RNG, and even if you do get to play it, it's not guaranteed that you're going to come out ahead on value compared to your opponent. And you also have to ask yourself, well, would I just rather these 3 cards be like other really good cards in my deck that, you know, instead of copying my opponent's good cards, can I just play my own good cards? Well, now you can, because Victoria has a new signature card, Magnificence. It's not new. This is an older set, but Magnificence, side action, power, illusion. Reroll 4 dice up in the target player's pool. Oh wait, we've already done this. Like, that's just surprise. Yes, it is just surprise. However, you don't have to reroll your own dice critically, too. So, reroll 4 dice in an opponent's player's active pool. Swap a target unit's printed attack and its printed life for the remainder of the turn. Deal 1 damage to a target unit, and then deal 1 damage to a target unit. This is actually surprisingly effective, really powerful card. For one, the reroll dice thing is a lot less risky than surprise, because you don't have to reroll your own dice. There's not as much chance of it just like, you know, whiffing and being bad for you. But yeah, you're trying to get rid of reaction spells, basically. You try to get rid of reaction spells with that. Then the swapping attack and life value can be so powerful. You can, you know, make knights or make these big kind of beefy units with like flip them and make them within kill range. or you can take like 2-1. Well, not 2-1s is the wrong example. Like 1-2s or 2-0s, they die instantly. 2-0s die instantly. There's not a whole lot of 1-2 conjurations in the game, or units in the game. That's pretty rare actually. But O2s, they just die. You just kill O2s, and then still be able to ping other things. Or you like have a wounded knight, a knight with like a 3/4 knight with 1 wound on it, and you flip it, and then you ping, and it's dead. At side action speed. It's really versatile. Even if you don't get a whole lot of value out of the swap, right? You still get the ping, and since it's side action, you can like swap the printed units attack in life and then attack into it, right? Or you use it on your own unit. Say you have like a let's just use the craziest example. Let's say you have a Sunshield Sentry on your side of the field, and you reroll your opponent's dice. They have no reactions. You swap your Sunshield Sentry. It's a 5/2. You ping 2 blockers, and then you attack your opponent for 5 damage. That's like the dream, right? But even like the more reasonable kind of expected output of this is like still really strong. And it also charges keepsake. So there's another bonus. So Victoria, I would say before she got her new signature card, she would have been down here, right? But now with Magnificence, I think she's actually really solid. But where do I put her? I think she's probably over here-ish somewhere in this area. Maybe below Jessa, because she doesn't have like an actual like built-in win con and fear. But I don't know. Magnificence has potentially more upside than fear. It can also, you know, yeah, it does. It has more potential upside than fear. Yeah, she's probably over here somewhere. Leo, she's probably better than Leo. Is she better than Rowan? I don't know. I think that's pretty speculative. But she's somewhere over here in the middle. I think she's really solid now. Oh my gosh, there's only one Phoenixborn left. Holy moly. Okay, let's do it. Xander. I'm gonna take my last drink of water. Okay. 20 life. Huge. Huge. 6/3. Awesome. Love that. 6 battlefield, 20 life. That is sick. Really good. Recurrent ally for a divine die. You know, it's a ceremonial power die that doesn't cost you health. That's actually, I think, pretty solid and really versatile. Are you going to want to use this all the time? No, not all the time. There's going to be plenty of turns where you can, you know, spend all your dice on the cards in hand and your spell board and be just fine. But sometimes you're just going to really need that ally that you need back from your discard pile. Where I think this gets really good is like playing with fire archers, because it gives you like built-in inevitability. You just keep pulling those fire archers back from your discard pile and playing them. And one crucial difference between doing that with this versus doing that with ceremonial power die is, if you're doing it with ceremonial power dice, you start running out of ceremonial dice really fast. But with this, you know, if you have a more even spread of ceremonial power or ceremonial and divine, you can do that like up to 4 times in a round. Before you run out of dice. You're not going to do that with pure ceremonial. Just no one runs that much ceremonial unless it's a mono build. But yeah, I think this is really flexible, solid Phoenixborn ability. It's not going to help you on board. It is like dice disadvantage, but it's flexible and useful in a lot of situations. Oops, I clicked on that one. Earthquake is a really powerful signature card that has a couple of reactions that can really ruin your day. You know, Fate Reflection, or you know, any other kind of cancel or prevention or so on. But you know, all removal spells kind of have that problem to it, some extent or another. But 4 damage, you kill a knight, you kill a big thing, and then 1 damage to each other unit. That does hit your board, you know, that's going to hit your own units, which is a little sad, but it's an AoE spell and a single target removal spell combined into one, which is huge. No other card in the game really does anything quite like this. Very powerful for 2 dice. Bravery is, in my opinion, a really underrated reaction. I think it's really cool. It's just a 1 die. After your unit you control is dealt damage. It doesn't even have to be an attack, or a lot of these prevention spells have like certain restrictions, like it has to be from an attack, or it has to be from a spell, or it has to be you know, ally conjuration, whatever. This just says unit dealt damage. Very versatile, very useful in a lot of different situations, and then you prevent that damage from being received. So there's no ceiling on the damage it can prevent. It doesn't cost any additional resources. I think this is really solid. It has the same kind of like swingy potential as not the same kind of swingy potential, but it has like a Rin's Fury thing, where if like they know you have bravery, then it's like a threat, or you know, they have to think about it even if you don't have it or whatever. Like, but this can be really huge. Like if they're planning their turn around making sure this thing dies, and then you can just make sure it doesn't die, that can be a big deal. Is that better than Earthquake? That's, you know, we've run into this question with a lot of different Phoenixborn that have these really powerful signature card spells. Like, do you really want to do a split? Do you really want to get rid of one of the best signature cards in the game for this? I don't think so. But I think Bravery potentially underrated. But yeah, I think this is really solid. Xander, I would put up here in, you know, probably A. Right up here with Saria. Can you go over there, please? No, yeah. Somewhere right next to Saria. Maybe in front of Saria. I don't know, but somewhere over here. Because the reason I wouldn't put him in S is simply because his Phoenixborn ability is not always useful and doesn't always like interact with the board, whereas these kind of always do. I mean, Echo doesn't always interact with the board the way like the removal works or whatever, or the way that like pressuring your opponent works, or so on. Yeah, anyway, so okay, here's the tier list. Like, let's just let's wrap this up a little bit. So here's the list. Now that it's all out on the table and everyone's here, would I change anything? I think there's a real argument for Echo being A instead of S. This is mostly based like on anecdotally and vibes, but like I just have, me and several others have had trouble making Echo be as good in actual games as he seems on paper. Now that is just a limitation, I think, of us. And like I was saying a minute ago, the gravity flux can be really useful, is cool, but it's a utility thing more than like a value thing most of the time. But I'm still tempted to keep him up here just because he's had some really great tournament performances with some really great players, and some players swear by him. Like Matt Bowers, like, swears by Echo and Chaos Gravity, says it's really, really, really strong. I think he's right. I think it really is. I'm tempted to keep Echo up here. I think that many people would debate whether Herald really belongs above Odette, and whether Cole belongs in S. I think he could maybe be down here in A, but I think that Slash is just so good that he has to be up here somewhere. The ordering of these like can be moved around a little bit here or there. I think just for me personally, I'm put Herald up above Odette. But Odette has Sword of Virtue, and I think Sword of Virtue really is better than quite a bit better than Herald's signature cards. I just think Mark Prey is just awesome. But and she has better life. She doesn't have to spend that life to use her ability. So maybe it looks more like this ish. I know some people would say Herald belongs in A, like somewhere over here. I don't think so. I think Mark Prey is that good. But yeah. As far as A goes, I mean, or reordering this middle section of A, it just feels like I could be here for hours, honestly, just nitty gritty going back and forth on this, but I think I'm happy with where all these are at, really. And there's no point really down here, like Sembali better than Fiona. No, who cares? It doesn't really matter too much. So what do I foresee changing potentially as new sets come out, as we get new stuff? Well, we know that the next new set is going to be Nature Artifice and Nature Astral. So what Phoenixborn could really benefit from, like a nature set. I think Ren could really benefit from something like this, especially if the Artifice units are anything to say. I think he has a lot of potential. Like, honestly, Ice Buff Thunderhulk sounds amazing just on its own. But we could see some really cool nature stuff going on there. I think Arren has so much room to improve. If we just get one more card that can put an astral die on him that makes sense to use in his deck, I think he immediately jumps up, like, way up here maybe. Yeah, there's a lot of potential for things to move around, but I think for now, my voice is so shot and I have so much editing to do. So for now, I'm going to call it right here. This is my tier list of Phoenixborn. One big takeaway from this, I think, is that so many of the Phoenixborn in this game are very competitive. And I don't think there's been a lot of debate in the Discord about this, but for me, S does not mean broken. This is not broken, okay? They are above A tier enough to make the distinction, where I think they have fewer downsides, more versatility, and slightly higher ceiling than the rest of these Phoenixborn. But these are not broken tier. These are the 5 best in my opinion. And I think a few of these Phoenixborn down here are honestly just riding their coattails. Could honestly be moved up and back and forth a little bit here. Most of the Phoenixborn live in A, which is what I consider like really competitive, but with just like some minor downsides and things you have to think about and build around. Really, it's only 5 of the 30 that I would say don't bother playing them competitively. And it's just, these guys here. But yeah, that means like most of the Phoenixborn in the game are really good. They're really good. And I think the difference between Jericho and Saria from one end of A to the other is actually like, it's not a huge gulf. Like Saria has like Saria and Xander, they have more life value than Jericho. Their Phoenixborn abilities have some more utility. Their signature cards are really where the power comes in. I think Jericho's signature cards aren't as good, but like there's not like a massive gap between these two. There's not a massive gap between like Xander and Jessa or Lulu. I think these are all really, A is really compact and tight, I think. The big gaps are between A and B, and that's like the big one, between A and B. So anyway, that's my tier list. I've probably talked way too much. I have so much editing to do. I hope you liked and enjoyed this. Again, disclaimer, as always, this is my opinion, blah, blah, blah. If you disagree, that's awesome. Make your own tier list, and I would love to see what you think. Let me know how wrong I am about Harold in the comments, and I will see you next time.